Rhythm Heaven is easily one of my favorite Nintendo franchises. The simple yet engaging challenge to maintain the rhythm in a variety of minigames is a ton of fun on its own, but then you slather it with the exact kind of personality, charm, and passion that I crave in my games, and it's no wonder I fell in love with the series. Since I love these games so much, I thought it would be fun to take a closer look at the cornerstone of the series, the rhythm games, ranking and discussing them all in detail. So how exactly is this going to work? For the sake of this ranking, we'll be looking at each minigame type. In other words, if a minigame has a sequel or alternate version, I won't be ranking them separately. Instead, I'll be ranking them together, viewing them as a whole unit. So for example, since Fever has both Figure Fighter 1 and 2, I'll be talking about both at the same time, on the same spot of the ranking, with the position reflecting what I think of Figure Fighter overall. I know that on paper that sounds kind of unfair to the minigames that don't have sequels, but honestly I don't have drastically different opinions between the different versions. Plus, the list and talking points would have gotten way too cluttered if I talked about each version separately. If there is a disparity between multiple versions, I'll be sure to mention them as we go along. Oh, and by the way, I'll be using rhythm game and minigame interchangeably to refer to an entry overall, as well as stage or level to refer to individual iterations. Next up, I've got a bunch of disclaimers involving Megamix. I won't mention any of the story, zero, or prequel, whatever you want to call them, versions of all the minigames from that game. These are all basically just less interesting versions of the minigames they're based on, and I won't have anything interesting to say about them. Though I'll still rank the small handful of Megamix originals. Also, if a game was remade in Megamix, I won't be looking at said remake and instead consider the original for the ranking for consistency. Not too big a deal since the originals were generally more interesting, especially the DS games with their touch controls. I will still reference some Megamix remakes if I think they're worth bringing up. Final caveat I want to mention is that I won't be including remixes in this ranking. They're technically rhythm games too, but they're combinations of all the other games, and I wanted to put the spotlight on the main minigames today. Now that we know what we're ranking, we gotta know how we're ranking. Each minigame will be ranked by how much I like them. Okay, but for real, what do I think makes a good rhythm game? There's a lot that goes into it for me. First of all, I think the game has to be fun and satisfying to play. How good does it feel to nail the inputs? The variety and complexity of inputs the stage demands, sound design, and animations all play into this enjoyment. Unique gameplay ideas can net minigames some bonus points too. I also enjoy stages that offer a good challenge, so that'll be factored in as well. Other important aspects include the song. It's gotta be good. Lastly, I want to be able to appreciate the concept or theme of the minigame. How charming or funny are the characters and scenario of that stage? We'll be looking at basically every aspect of these rhythm games. And this goes without saying, but this is all just my opinion. Music is already highly subjective, so surely a music game is even more subjective. But spoilers, I find like 90% of the series minigames good. So just because I rank something at like 80th place doesn't mean I think it's bad. I just like the other ones more. I'll try my best to explain what I think of each rhythm game and why I place them in the spots I did though. I'm not trying to change your mind or argue anything in a quote-unquote objective sense. I'm just a guy who loves playing the Rhythm Heavens and wanted to have a fun time yapping about them. Alright, now that's enough preamble. It's time for the show. With the criteria I laid out, that gives us 25 rhythm games from GBA, 25 from DS, 29 from Fever, and 13 from Megamix. That's a whopping 92 entries to discuss. I'm gonna go on for as long as I want about each of these rhythm games, so get comfy, grab a snack, cause here we go. We'll be dividing the list into tiers as we go along, starting with what is undoubtedly my least favorite rhythm game and the only one in the series I would say I actively dislike. I don't think this is too controversial of a take, but Working Dough overall is easily the worst in the series and it's not even close. In this rhythm game, you play as Dough, and you gotta time your button presses to transport the metal orb thingies. Now, the first iteration of this minigame is alright. Despite being a copycat type of game where you gotta repeat the input from another character, it manages to stay mildly engaging with some varied beat patterns, this one in particular being the highlight. I also find pressing A and B to hit inputs with the big guy to be decently satisfying. However, this minigame stays at this consistent and basic difficulty throughout the whole runtime. Nothing outside of that one bit I just showed stands out to me, so I just kinda tune out of everything after a while. This one can get pretty boring. Speaking of, the visuals and music aren't anything special either. This black and gray factory setting is kind of unique for the series, but isn't very exciting on its own. I do love the boiling lines effect on the dough dudes themselves though. The music, much like the gameplay, is pretty bland. It doesn't have a coherent melody or any kind of progression to latch onto. It's a big part of why the gameplay gets so boring for me. it's just doing the bare minimum to go along with each individual set. If Working Dough were just this one version, I probably would have placed this minigame like 10 spots higher, but hey, it wouldn't be at the bottom. This stage is nothing special, just serviceable all around. But let's stop beating around the bush, you know what's coming. The main reason Working Dough is last place is because of its sequel. Working Dough 2 specifically is bar none the worst stage in the whole series. It took the already kind of slow and uninteresting Working Dough and turned it into a total slog to get through. The patterns you have to repeat are so awkward and spaced out. There is zero flow to the inputs in this one. It's insane how unsatisfying it is to play. There's a bit of focus on offbeats now, but since the patterns are so basic, I never even noticed there were offbeats to begin with. So many times you'll only have 1 or 2 orbs to hit, and these patterns still don't even fit that well with the background music. Actually, a lot of the time the music will just cut out, making it a downgrade from the original, which I didn't even think could be possible. The alien bunny cameos and bamboo forest aesthetic are neat and all, but they barely help the stage's case. Working Dough 2 is consistently the low point of the game whenever I replay Fever. It's straight up not fun. So with the original being just fine, and the sequel being a total snooze fest, Working Dough overall is without a doubt, in my mind, the worst minigame in all of Rhythm Heaven. It's a shame, really. As I'm sure you're aware, a minigame getting a sequel pretty much always means getting a tougher, more interesting version of the original, which is exciting. Upping the tempo, giving the song a better remix, and demanding more inputs from the player would have done wonders to improve the original Working Dough. But alas. Random final things I want to mention, I think it's funny how Working Dough 2 is the third to last stage in Megamix. Like, I couldn't believe they brought it back during the final stage, that was so anticlimactic. But I will praise the final remix and Megamix for having the only amazing Working Dough section in the entire series. That deserves some props. Like I said, Working Dough is the only minigame I would say I dislike. So now we're moving on to the next tier for a bit, the meh games. These are minigames I don't find unfun to play, but still don't give me much enjoyment or excitement. Kicking off this tier we have our first entry from the original Rhythm Heaven on Game Boy Advance, Wizard Waltz. Side note, I'm just going to refer to this game as Rhythm Heaven GBA from now on. Tengoku literally means heaven in Japanese, at least according to Google Translate, so just call it the name of the game, guys. Side note, that also means I'll just be calling the DS Rhythm Heaven DS. Sorry, I know I'm boring. Anyways, Rhythm Heaven GBA was never localized, so I'm sure many of you are unfamiliar with the small handful of minigames that didn't make it into Megamix. Wizard Waltz is one of them, and it's just okay. In this one, you play as a wizard who plants flowers to the beat, then makes them bloom by repeating that same beat. Another copycat game, like Working Dough. I don't really have anything super positive to say about it, it's just aggressively fine. It's mildly fun to time the inputs, as per usual, but the game is lacking in everything else. There's only one type of input, so the stage gets repetitive fast. I'm also not a fan of how clear the visual cues are. If you line up the wizard's shadow, you can nail the inputs every time. But you know, this one would probably get a little too tricky without that assist, so it's fine, I guess. Still, the patterns stay real simple and samey throughout the entire runtime, so the stage ends up both very boring and very easy gameplay-wise. The visuals are also pretty uninteresting, just showing us these two characters with whatever designs in an empty void. It's cute to help the little guy in the middle get a flower crown, I'll give it that. Moving on to music, I don't really care for this track. I guess the song being a waltz makes it pretty unique for the series, but I'm not musically informed enough to appreciate that. In practice, that just makes for a slow, boring song to listen to as you play through these very basic and repetitive cycles. Wizard Waltz is an extremely okay minigame among the sea of amazing ones. There's just nothing here for me to latch onto. And now, the first DS minigame. While I think the DS game has the most solid selection overall, Fillbots is not one of those solid ones. This game sees you filling up some robots where you have to time an initial tap, hold for a certain number of beats, then let go with good timing. First, positives. I quite like this game mechanically. I think it's pretty satisfying to let go at exactly the right time, especially if you do it perfectly and get that little bonus animation of the robot flying away. The sound effects for the robots getting built and having the liquid poured into them helps make that core mechanic as good as it can be. But unfortunately this game kinda fumbles everything else. Since you're spending so much time filling these bots and watching them get built, you're waiting around for a surprising amount of time. In addition to these regular robots that take 4 beats, there's also these big robots that take double that time to fill, so this one can get pretty boring. Even though there are 2 robot types, you do the same action over and over for both, so there's a lot less variety than it seems. The visuals are also really bland, and I don't find the song catchy or anything. I feel like giving this game a more appealing coat of paint would have done wonders. Luckily, Philbots was one of the DS games to get a sequel, and it kinda sucks. Philbots 2 is a contender for one of the worst stages in the whole series. It has some elements I enjoy about it, but since it's building off an already mediocre stage, everything comes with a little asterisk. The main new mechanic are these robots that take a much shorter time to fill, and this darkness gimmick. I don't find the darkness that interesting, as it's really easy to just count in your head how long a bot needs to be filled. Also, it'll be obvious which bot you're working with as it fills up. The darkness can make timing that initial tap a little harder though, which is neat. Those little guys are the much better addition as they allow for more frequent inputs. However, even in those sections with a bunch of them back to back, the game feels very clunky with how you have to wait a moment before moving on to the next one. This iteration also introduces a bunch of offbeat sections that throw me off a lot. I get some enjoyment out of them, but they can be really unsatisfying since they're not in sync with the song. I know that's the entire point of offbeats, but I can't lie about how unimpactful and awkward they feel in practice. Ultimately, all those caveats I mentioned make the extra bits of difficulty and engagement not enough to salvage this minigame. Even worse, basically everything I said about the first one's bland aesthetics applies to the sequel. The stage didn't even get a proper remix, just a new section at the end, though that new section is delightfully funky. And of course, there's the elephant in the room, the length. Philbots 2 is notorious for being an extremely long stage. It's over 3 minutes including the intro card, making it by far the longest normal stage in the series. And yeah, it deserves all the flack I guess for that. This stage is not that fun to justify its insane length for Rhythm Heaven standards. The fact that the stage sounds like it's about to end in not 1, but 2 instances and doesn't, makes the length feel especially egregious. This length can also make those difficult offbeat sections extremely frustrating, and not in a fun way. Missing certain robots can lock you out of a superb rating on an otherwise perfect run, potentially forcing you to sit through this long, tedious stage over and over on your first playthrough. The length alone makes Philbots 2 a stage I never want to play on my own accord. Overall, Philbots has a neat idea with its gameplay, but ultimately ends up as a slow, uninteresting minigame with some of the most forgettable theming and worst execution in the entire series. It's another one that you just kinda tune out of as you play, especially in the sequel with its ridiculous length. I still get enough out of the core mechanic to keep it out of the bottom too, but man, this minigame is rough. And this one hurts to put so low. Double Date is a rhythm game I wish I loved more. What immediately sets this one apart to me are the vibes. Double Date has one of my favorite music tracks in Fever. The slow pace and instrumentation create such a romantic mood, fitting for, well, a double date. The visuals are wonderful too. That sunset is so cozy, and it's cute to see the boy and his crush sitting together, even though realistically this is like the lamest date ever. But as much as I love the aesthetics of this minigame, the gameplay itself is what matters most, and unfortunately, I don't find it very fun. You play as the boy and have to kick these sports balls away from the weasel couple, who's also on a date. This action is one of the weakest in the series. There's 3 types of inputs, but they all feel so samey to me, especially the soccer and basketballs. It's pretty boring just pressing A to time these very slow inputs that you get forever to react to, one at a time. That slow tempo really doesn't do the gameplay any favors. As a result, the mechanics end up repetitive, and the game doesn't do much to make it more interesting as it goes on. There are these alleged hard parts at one point, but they feel exactly the same to do as all the other inputs. And just like Philbots, Double Date gets a sequel that doesn't help it out much. If anything, I like it substantially less than the original. Double Date 2 removes the immaculate atmosphere of the first, and replaces the song with a worse cover in my opinion. Like, way worse. I know this is super subjective, but I seriously dislike it. It's probably the worst stage theme in the series. The part at the middle is especially bad. It genuinely lowers my enjoyment of the stage a lot. I don't dig the visual changes either. The midday farm aesthetic pales in comparison to the late after-school setting of the original. Getting rid of the one thing the original had going for it is bad enough, but to make matters worse, the gameplay still isn't all that good. The mechanics are reused from the first, and it doesn't even feel that much harder. Sure, there are more sports balls to deal with, but once again, the slow tempo really undermines that attempt to spice things up. You still have so much time to see everything coming, it isn't very engaging. With whatever theming, bad music, and boring gameplay, Double Date 2 veers into dislike territory for me. Much like Working Dough 2, it's a stage I groan at having to go through on replay. While Double Date 1 has great atmosphere and music, the gameplay is so lackluster that I just don't enjoy sitting through this one. Combined with a sequel that removes the immaculate theming of the original and fails to improve upon its gameplay, Double Date unfortunately falls pretty far down on my ranking. The first iteration would probably place about 10 spots higher on its own. Yes, the aesthetics are that strong for me, but these stages just don't hold a candle to the rest of the competition. I appreciate the series trying to build a stage around a slow song, but this just isn't it. Donk Donk is definitely one of the most forgettable minigames in the series. Its most distinguishing feature is how nonsensical and nondescript the scenario is, even among the zaniness of the other minigames. But I don't know man, it just ends up feeling so awkward and stilted. This minigame has zero sauce, it's not charming in the slightest. I do think it's enjoyable enough to actually play though. This one is all about switching between two different rhythms, and yeah, I think that's pretty fun. However, I wouldn't say playing the individual rhythms themselves are fun, if that makes any sense. The first one is just pressing A twice every so often, and with the second one you end up pressing A over and over. They aren't very satisfying on their own, and the stage doesn't twist the mechanic at all outside of obscuring your vision in a minigame with unhelpful visual cues. This is yet another rhythm game you just kinda coast through, since there isn't much variety. The audio is definitely part to blame for how unsatisfying those rhythms are. The music isn't really catchy, and the sound effects and audio cues aren't memorable either. Those cues being super awkward voice clips that aren't charming, just like the overall theme. Donk Donk does stick out a little for its interesting rhythm-changing gameplay gimmick, but in practice it gets too repetitive, with underwhelming aesthetics being the final nail in its coffin. The most interesting thing about this minigame is the Rhythm Heaven cameo at the end. Yeah, let's just move on. Dog Ninja is yet another minigame I wish I liked more. I mean, it combines like the two coolest things in the world, ninjas and dogs. This one should have been a slam dunk. But like Donk Donk, this one suffers from being repetitive, and the action you're repeating being uninteresting. In this one you just gotta swipe at the right time to cut everything in time with the song. The gameplay loop in this one stays basically the same throughout the whole thing. Later on, multiple things to swipe start showing up more frequently, but that doesn't make it any more interesting. There's effectively no sense of progression in the gameplay, so again, you just kinda tune out of everything as you play. The music is also part to blame for this, as it's surprisingly really not good, even among the weaker stages here at the bottom of the ranking. Seriously, this track is so bland and boring to listen to. One of the most forgettable songs in the series for sure. The visuals are pretty lame too, just showing us the back of Dog Ninja. In any case, I quite like the swiping mechanics of DS, so I'd rather play this over the previous few minigames. But Dog Ninja is a painfully average rhythm game to get through. It brings nothing unique or exciting to the table in every single one of its categories. Is this a controversial take? I really do not care for Space Dance. Like Dog Ninja, this is a minigame that should be awesome on paper. Like you read the name Space Dance and think, oh yeah! But in practice, it's very boring to me. In this one, you and a few other guys are standing in space and gotta hit a couple of buttons based on the cues to dance. The can be pretty fun thanks to the voice clip, but it's used the least. Most of the time you're dealing with the other two, which are just simple, press the button the following beat kind of deals. To make matters worse, they're rarely used in an engaging manner. The gameplay loop is mostly just press one button, wait a bit, press another. The string of inputs doesn't feel cohesive and satisfying to do outside of a few instances, such as the ending bit. That part's fun for what it is, but it's not super impressive in my opinion. I could look past this if the other aspects of Space Dance were strong, but they really aren't. For one, the visuals are fairly static, and the poses the spacemen hit aren't that cool or fun to watch. I'm pretty indifferent to the designs of the spacemen as well. The song is especially disappointing to me. I don't think it's that good or exciting, even in the second half. Something about that main melody feels so awkward and stilted, like it's trying so hard to be catchy but failing miserably. I know that's a very subjective opinion, but every time I listen to this track it just does not hit. Well, the stage got a sequel, so maybe it's better? It's not. Unfortunately, it's possibly the most nothing sequel in the entire series for me. Cosmic Dance, or Space Dance 2, doesn't do anything to improve upon the original. I guess I prefer the jazzier rendition of the song a little more, but I wasn't a fan of the original track to begin with. Gameplay wise, you still have the same uninteresting inputs and presentation. The poses do happen at much more frequent intervals, but it's barely more interesting than the original, let alone challenging. And the worst part? There's this random 10 seconds of silence in the middle of the level for some reason. It's kinda funny the first time, but just annoying anytime you want to replay the stage. Cosmic Dance could have redeemed the Space Dance name with its more appealing aesthetics, but it dropped the ball real hard with its gameplay, especially with that silent bit. That just leaves me feeling extremely mixed on this iteration. Sorry if I sounded a little harsh, but Space Dance really isn't my thing. The theming is so vague and music so whatever that I can't get into it. With aesthetics that completely miss the mark, all that's left here is slow, basic gameplay that's hard to get invested in due to its subpar execution. There's far more interesting rhythm games in this series if you ask me. And now we have our first Megamix original. Tangotronic 3000 is the weakest of the 13 introduced in that game if you ask me. The biggest praise I have for it is that I find it really funny. Like, this woman just invented a robot so she could dance the tango with someone. I don't know, that gets a chuckle out of me every time I think about it. But looking past that, I don't really enjoy playing this stage that much. Much like Space Dance, the cues all feel too spread out and isolated to be very engaging. A lot of my favorite minigames mix up the cues, place them back to back, to keep you on your toes. Tangotronic doesn't really do that, you know? It does pick up later on, but there are still some awkward pauses in this one that stick out to me. A lot of the action is just follow the cue, wait a bit, repeat. With how robotic I made it sound, I guess it's kinda fitting, huh? Anyways, on the bright side, these are fairly fun to input on their own thanks to the sound design. Especially that triple tap and twirl where you gotta press and release at the right time. That puts it a step above Space Dance for me. But what really holds Tangotronic back is the music. I don't like it that much. It's not that memorable, but it fits the stage well at least. It does have pretty good progression compared to the other minigames we've looked at so far. Overall, the humor of Tangotronic carries it above the recent entries for me, but with subpar gameplay, it's still one of the last rhythm games I'd willingly play. Here we have yet another forgettable minigame from Fever. I like Catch of the Day a little more than Donk Donk though. In this one, you have to time your button presses to reel in 3 types of fish, with each having their own cues. The gameplay in this one is actually quite solid. Each of those fishes are pretty fun to reel in with how much they emphasize feeling the rhythm, so to speak, in order to catch. My favorite being the biggest guys. You gotta wait such a specific amount of time before reeling them in, so I find it pretty satisfying to nail that input whenever I can. I also find it kinda tricky in general, which I appreciate. The small and medium guys are pretty simple by comparison, and they're way more common throughout the stage. They're still pretty satisfying thanks to the sound design though. Especially those medium guys, I like their timing a lot. And I guess the stage's pacing would have sucked if they used the biggest guy more often. However, that means Catch of the Day falls into the repetitive camp. The way the stage is designed just inherently prevents the mechanics from getting developed as it goes on, since the cues are so deliberate. Still, the gameplay is what brings the stage to this spot, as everything else is just for me. The song isn't very good, which feels like a trend among these meh games, and it isn't very interesting thematically. Yes, the big fish has a creepy deep voice, but fishing honestly feels too mundane of a topic to turn into a rhythm game, at least with how they did it here. Though this is the first instance of the series staple cute girl in this ranking. Actually, never mind, I forgot about Double Date. Again, Catch of the Day isn't bad, it's just forgettable. On the bright side, that's the last time I'll be saying that, because this marks the end of the meh tier. In summary, these were minigames that faltered heavily in some category for me, whether it be underwhelming gameplay, execution, or aesthetics. But with how little time we spent on this tier, that just goes to show how good the series is. Like, I only think one minigame kinda sucks and 8 are just okay. From here on out, I at the very least like the minigame. We still got a whole lot more to cover, so let's continue. Here we have probably my most controversial take in the whole video. I unironically like Quiz Show. Honestly, the hate this level seems to get is overblown if you ask me. This stage is pretty unique for Rhythm Heaven standards. Instead of having to time inputs to the beat of a song, you have to figure out how many times the host hits his button on the stand. The idea is to copy the rhythm he hits the buttons with to make it easier to count. The main criticism with this level is that you don't actually have to hit the buttons with rhythm, since getting the correct number in the end is all that matters. And like, I get it. On paper, a rhythm game that doesn't require rhythm sounds like sacrilege. But in practice, it's still basically impossible to guess how many times the host hits his buttons, so you want to at least try to copy the rhythm. And doing the copying is pretty fun if you ask me. It encourages you to use both the D-pad and A button to make the counter go up fast, which is an idea barely used throughout the series. Another common critique is that there's no music in this level, and yeah, that's fair. There's only the success jingle and theme song that plays at the very start and end. However, I don't mind the omission of a typical music track here. I think having a proper track wouldn't work since you have to manually advance the dialogue, and it would probably be too distracting to play on your turn. But still, I think at least having like a metronome or something when it's your turn would have gone a long way at making this level more audibly interesting. Actually, Quiz Show could definitely work well with music, as seen in Remix 4 and 6. The minigame's moments in those are pretty fun. That won't affect the ranking, I just wanted to mention it. Last thing to bring up is the theming. I love how the host is this demon that feeds off the anguish of his contestants. Such a funny lore tidbit that makes me like this level a little more if I'm being honest. His dialogue is also pretty funny. So while Quiz Show is nowhere near the best minigame in the series, I appreciate its inclusion and the GBA game wouldn't be the same without it. Sure, it is a little bizarre to see it on the main menu alongside the other traditional rhythm games, especially with modern standards in mind. Quiz Show probably would have worked better as a side mode or something, I don't know, just a thought. This stage is a fun diversion from the standard Rhythm Heaven formula with a neat gimmick and presentation. I honestly get more enjoyment out of the stage on average compared to the previous entries. Again, I'm not saying this stage is the peak of the series or anything, it still made the bottom 10, but it'll sit comfortably here as the gatekeeper between the meh and I like it tiers. I'd be lying if I said Quiz Show doesn't put a smile on my face. You know, I don't know why they decided this should be a recurring minigame in the series. Kinda. This aesthetic has been reused throughout the first 3 games, but each iteration is pretty different, so I don't know what's up with that. Oh yeah, in case you couldn't tell, this spot is for the Wii version of Built to Scale. This is definitely my least favorite version of the game, but I like it okay. You just have to press A to keep the cylinder moving, and then press A and B to launch it when needed. While it is repetitive, only requiring you to do the same pattern over and over, keeping the beat is pretty fun. The sound effects and music synergy make the cycles more fun than it seems, and when it's time to launch the thingy with A and B, that's really satisfying. The speed and pitch also change over time to spice things up. It gets surprisingly fun when it gets faster given how simple this one is. The speed does slow down at certain parts, which is pretty lame naturally, but those parts emphasize feeling the rhythm, so I get why they're here. The sequel for this stage is even better. First of all, the background gets recolored to this turquoise, which is like my favorite, and it's a bit more interesting mechanically. This time the first widget of the sequence will be on the offbeat. It's a pretty minor change in the grand scheme, but it's still a welcome pinch of spice. Other than that, the sequel is more of the same. I don't have anything else to add. Built to scale Wii is very simple, both visually and mechanically, with a repetitive gameplay loop to boot. However, it stays engaging thanks to the speed changes and sound design. These ones are no doubt a good time, but I can't place them very high. We got yet another Fever minigame up next. In Forklifter, you're tasked with timing button presses to catch the, food stuff. I'll start out a little negatively and say this is as thematically bland a rhythm game could get. A few other games use this featureless white plane, but at least they have memorable characters associated with them. All you get here is this disembodied hand, which I don't find very funny, honestly. So while I think this minigame doesn't offer anything exciting at a glance, it's still quite fun to play. The main mechanic of stabbing the food at the right time is really satisfying thanks to the sound design, as well as how fast it comes flying in. There's a lot of fun patterns to react to, especially in the latter half. That gets it some variety points from me. You're obviously meant to use rhythm to time your inputs, but the visual cues definitely enhance the experience. The visuals can also help with your timing, which I think is pretty smart design for an early stage. I'm also pretty partial to the song. I find it catchy and quite memorable. The first half is real groovy. I like it a lot. It keeps the stage enjoyable before the gameplay picks up. It's got good synergy with the gameplay too. It's what makes it so fun. Those aspects put Forklifter a cut above the previous spot. We're still in the territory of mechanically and aesthetically basic rhythm games, but now we're starting to see much better gameplay execution, which makes them fun regardless. Now it's time for our second Megamix original. In Lumberjack, you're a buff bear and you gotta chop wood for these wacky stretchy cats. I think this one's got solid gameplay. I get a real kick out of the core wood chopping mechanic. The animation of the log tilting toward the center makes it super fun to try and perfect your timing. For variety's sake, the minigame throws in additional log sizes that require consecutive hits, but they don't change things up that much. They do add some extra pizzazz to the minigame, which I appreciate. The bear shouts do make you feel pretty powerful. I also love the random objects you get, those are pretty funny. The bear's reaction after cutting them is great too. The aesthetics, however, falter heavily for me. The song is pretty bland for both iterations, which is a big detractor for me. I especially don't care for the sequels track, though much like Tangotronic, I appreciate how much the first iteration song fits with the theme. I also don't find those wacky stretchy cats that funny or endearing. Humor is of course subjective, but the bit just gets too ham-fisted when they start appearing in the background, in my opinion. Honestly, if it weren't for Lumberjack being the bookend minigame in Megamix's final remix, this one would have been pretty forgettable to me. The satisfying mechanics and variety in log types bump it up a little. Just a little. We breached the 70s of our ranking with another Megamix minigame, Fruit Basket. In this one you play as a blobby guy and have to shoot fruits into the hoops. This stage is too easy in my opinion. Even though there are two types of fruits to worry about, the visual cues make waiting until the fruit gets into the center an obvious easy way out. This even applies to the lemons, which are supposed to be the trickier input. Even if we ignore the difficulty, the stage doesn't do anything unique with its basic mechanics. Thematically, it also isn't very interesting. This blue blobby guy doesn't grab me, but I do enjoy his random thoughts that appear. Last thing of note is the sound. The music is solid, with the build-up for that final sequence being the clear highlight. The sound effects for the fruits getting dunked are great too. The sequel steps things up a fair amount. It introduces these melons, which you pretty much have to rely on audio to handle. I find these ones much more fun to deal with than the other inputs for that reason. But it's literally only used twice in the stage. Still, when the different fruits start coming in back to back, this one can be a fun time. I'm pretty indifferent to this new song. I think I prefer the original. I like how dopey that one sounded. The sequel definitely improves over the original, but it's still nothing noteworthy overall. Fruit Basket as a whole is undoubtedly polished, but it lacks anything super unique to it. It's another bog standard minigame in my mind. Shrimp Shuffle is a pretty basic one. Here you just gotta keep the beat with the A button to partake in the titular shuffle. Gameplay wise, it's pretty similar to Donk Donk in the sense that you're repeating this one rhythm over and over, but I prefer the stage's special input more. Sometimes you have to press A and B for the last input of this rhythm to do this lunge move. Pressing both of those buttons is always pretty satisfying to do in Fever, so I enjoy it here too. This one also features a couple of breaks in the music, which I always find really awkward for some reason. I do enjoy how much it throws me off though, I find it pretty challenging. I'm glad they included it, cause otherwise this is one of those levels that you just kinda coast through. It's fairly repetitive and lacking in challenge, but it's still enjoyable overall for the reasons I mentioned. The music's pretty sweet at the very least. Next up is the opening minigame in Fever. In Hole-in-One, you play as a golfer and have to time your swings to sink the golf balls. This one serves as the intro to the game, so naturally it shouldn't be too in-depth, but I think they went too far in terms of keeping it simple. The golfer is always animated to line up with when you should press A, which just makes the game way too easy for my liking. Even if there wasn't an obvious visual cue, there still isn't much going on in this level. There are only two types of inputs, and the more interesting one is far too underutilized. Most of the stage uses the same basic cue over and over. I honestly kinda dislike playing this one. It's just a slog to get through on replay. That being said, the cheery visuals and music make this one enjoyable to sit through, even if I think it's painfully boring to play. Luckily, I think the sequel is good. It suffers from the obvious visual cue of the first, but it makes up for that by having the golf balls come at you in more interesting patterns. Monkey throwing the small ones back to back the way he does can really catch you off guard if you aren't expecting it. Mantrol also has a couple of offbeats which I appreciate. Top it off with a great remix, sweet pink color scheme, and a Rhythm Heaven cameo, and Hole-in-One 2 redeems the Hole-in-One name in my eyes. Enough to keep it out of the meh tier, at least. These stages are a case of nailing the aesthetics, but fumbling the gameplay hard. Kind of the opposite of what we've been seeing. That swing animation seriously undermines the experience for me, even in the sequel. As a result, Hole-in-One can't place very far on my list. Last Fever minigame for a while, I promise. In Launch Party, you gotta press A at the very end of each countdown to launch these rhythm rockets. There are 4 types of rockets in countdowns, but apparently 3 of them have the exact same timing, which I never noticed. It's interesting how much a different coat of paint can make each rocket feel unique, when they're really the same. Anyways, the highlight here is the sound design. I really like the different sound effects for all the rockets. They make this one a lot more fun than it would be otherwise. The blue rocket is especially good. The chimes for its countdown and party popper for the launch make timing those particular inputs quite satisfying. But still, much like the other recent entries, there isn't much to this one gameplay wise. Just repeat these 4, or technically 2, inputs over and over for a bit. The song and visuals aren't much to write home about either. On the visual side, the stage starts obscuring the countdown later on. This could add some challenge for a less experienced player, but it doesn't do anything for me. Launch Party is decently fun, with the sound effects greatly elevating the experience. Not much more to say about this one, just a solid one-off rhythm game. The copycat minigames are back with Drummer Duel. This one tasks you with repeating a drum beat from the other side. The gameplay here is pretty neat until the halfway point. There, the different patterns get replaced with just whamming of that drum faster and faster. I'm pretty mixed on this part of the stage. On one hand, it's fun to try and physically keep up with the other side because of the touch controls, but on the other, I find remembering and repeating the unique patterns of the first half to be more interesting. I don't know if it's just me, but I have to make such a conscious effort to memorize each wave, so the first half gets pretty engaging. I like each phase for different reasons, but when I take a step back and look at the minigame overall, it just doesn't feel very cohesive, as odd as that sounds. It's almost as though these are 2 separate versions of the minigame merged together. I think it would have been better if the fast section still had some variety in the patterns. Moving on, the theming and music are also very whatever. It combines taiko drums, cheerleaders, and some kind of red versus blue rivalry. Much like the gameplay, the visuals aren't very cohesive and it makes it hard for me to get excited at the thought of the stage. The music is also some of the most forgettable in the series. I dare you to hum a melody from the stage other than the one used in Remix 10. Though, to be fair, the sound effects take up most of the sound real estate, and I do like them. Overall, Drummer Duel has neat ideas with its gameplay, but doesn't explore them fully with its segmented design. Combined with nothing theming and music, this one fails to stand out to me despite its fun moments. Moai Doo-Wop is a kooky minigame. Here you have to repeat the doo-wop and shout pattern your partner does. It's yet another copycat type minigame. I promise I don't hate all of them. This stage is a mixed bag for me, so let's start with the gameplay. I don't find the main mechanic of doo-wopping all that fun on its own. The stage doesn't use it to make many interesting patterns in my opinion. The sound effects and animation for this action are pretty static too, which make the doo-wops feel kind of whatever to do. The shouts, however, are much better in that regard and end up as a more enjoyable input. I love the sound effect for this move especially, and the way the moais lunge forward make this input pretty satisfying. That one part with just the shouts being the highlight for me. It's a little annoying how fast you have to tap for the shouts to register, but it's not that big of a deal. That being said, the shouts aren't so strong that they can carry the stage. The gameplay is at its best when it manages to mix these two mechanics together. Aesthetically, the stage is just okay. The song naturally has to be repetitive to accommodate the gameplay, but it still elevates the experience thanks to its synergy. However, I'm pretty indifferent to the theme. Sorry, but I don't find moai statues inherently funny. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, but this minigame got a sequel. While it doesn't change things up musically and aesthetically, at least until the very end, it is noticeably much more challenging than the original, which I really appreciate. The faster, more sporadic doo-wop and shout patterns make the mechanics a lot more enjoyable than the first, but my gripes about their lackluster game feel still stand. The most notable difference in this version is the nighttime bit at the end. It's a cute change of pace, but it's honestly too little too late. Even though the sequel does greatly improve the original's gameplay with its better execution and variety, it doesn't stick out much in my mind because of the reused assets. Overall, while Moai Doo-Wop has some good moments, it's brought down by uninteresting theming and mixed execution. The sequel does bump it up a few spots for me, but it's still a pretty run-of-the-mill copycat minigame. Power Calligraphy is an absolute classic of a rhythm game. All you gotta do is time A presses to the grunts to write. This is one of the most simple stages in the series, but it manages to stick out through how absurd it is. The concept of writing Japanese characters with such visceral force is the kind of uniquely bizarre idea that you'll only find in Rhythm Heaven. It never gets old listening to those exaggerated grunts. But still, the simplicity in the gameplay is the big drawback for me and why I have it so low. It is pretty fun to time your powerful brush strokes thanks to the sound design, but a lot of the time you're just waiting for the cue as the hand automatically writes most of the character. The sped up section near the end is the highlight, partly thanks to the little dancing people on the side, but it doesn't change the mechanics. The gameplay really boils down to doing one basic input every once in a while. Regardless, the concept, humor, and sound design hard carry Power Calligraphy for me. They're incredible compared to the previous entries. Those alone make this a minigame I'd much rather play over something like Donk Donk or whatever. Love Lizards is a minigame that kinda gets lost in the crowd in my eyes, but I still quite like it. Here you have to slide the touchscreen in time with the other lizard's cue. Like Power Calligraphy, this is a very simple one that gets elevated by the aesthetics. The love lizards themselves are cute and the music track is a fun, cheery tune. I love the male lizards chirp when you do a successful input too. Such an adorable way of getting feedback. All that being said, the gameplay is still enjoyable in its own right. This is one of 2 minigames in DS that use this special shake input. The rhythm at which you have to slide the screen is pretty fun, especially when you have to do it several times back to back. While it's a solid mechanic, you only have to worry about that one motion for the entire stage, so it can get repetitive. Though the stage's short length prevents that problem from becoming a big deal. Love Lizards is simple fun that gets enhanced through its charming aesthetics. An enjoyable time all around. Rhythm Tweezers is another absolute classic rhythm game. It's a copycat type stage where hairs will appear on the vegetables, and you have to repeat the rhythm they appeared at to pluck them. Again, like Power Calligraphy, this is the kind of wackiness that's so distinct it's series defining, and I'm quite partial to this minigame because of that. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's super fun. It does have some unique elements, like these curly hairs that require you to hold down A. The sound effect makes these ones really fun to deal with. There are also these rounds where the hairs will appear really close together, encouraging you to alternate between A and the D-pad to pluck them rapidly. These moments up the challenge of an otherwise simple stage, and having the inputs be as tight as they are is really fun and unique stage design for the series, even 3 games later. Last thing to note is the music. I'm honestly not a fan of it in a vacuum, but it's still worth appreciating its unique Arabian vibe. Like any other GBA sequel, Rhythm Tweezers 2 isn't anything special compared to what the future games do with their sequels. This is basically the same stage but with harder patterns, which I of course prefer, but ultimately it doesn't affect the minigame's ranking that much. The first iteration explored the mechanics well enough in my opinion, plus this version isn't that more difficult than the first. There are still some great rounds in this one though. Rhythm Tweezers spices up the copycat formula with its varied and tight inputs, as well as super distinct theming. The only thing holding it back for me is the song, which again, I'm not a fan of. Blue Bear immediately stands out from the other rhythm games for its tone. While the rest of the series is zany, jovial fun, this one is all somber and slow. This naturally applies to the music for this stage too, making it one of the most unique tracks in the series. Sure, it's all for a gag at the end, but the first impression it leaves really sticks with you, and Blue Bear ends up as one of the most memorable minigames, thematically, in all of Megamix. That being said, it's just alright. In this one, you gotta press A to munch on the snacks as they fall down. There are 2 types of snacks. The donuts are the basic one that need to be chomped 2 beats after appearing. The more interesting one are the cakes. They take 3 beats, but they fly off screen, requiring you to count in your head, which I find pretty fun. You're also required to press either A or the D-pad based on where the snacks fall, which is a nice change of pace. This one gets much better in the second half, where the snacks start coming in back to back as the song intensifies. The song itself gets quite good in my opinion, but the gameplay is still nothing special due to its relatively simple execution. That back-to-back business is the only way the stage tries to switch things up, and even then it doesn't leave much of an impression since you're just pressing the buttons on each beat at that point. The unique mood Blue Bear offers is what brings it up past its fellow rhythm games in this tier for me. The gameplay is too simple for my liking, both in concept and execution, but it's still fun for what it is. Rhythm Rally is a fast-paced minigame where you gotta keep a table tennis rally going, the key to doing so obviously being rhythm. Maintaining the rally is good fun on its own thanks to the brisk pacing, but it naturally gets pretty repetitive. That's where the 2 special inputs come in. Sometimes the timing for hitting the ball will be slower or faster. These naturally help spice up the otherwise bland gameplay loop, but not by much, surprisingly. These alternate inputs only make up a small portion of the stage. When you do get to do them, it's just once and then you're immediately back to the standard rally, outside of a few instances. They don't add as much variety as you'd expect in my opinion. I'm also not a fan of having to flick for every input. It was fine for Dog Ninja since that stage was so slow, but the faster tempo here makes it pretty annoying. Lastly, the music and visuals aren't that special to me, though using 3D models here is very unique for the series. So yeah, I don't have strong feelings for Rhythm Rally 1, but the sequel bumps it up a fair bit. It introduces sections where the rally gets super fast for a moment, in addition to a faster tempo overall. These are great changes, but once again, I still find it too repetitive. Rhythm Rally 2 arguably worsens this problem since it's longer than the first, almost too long for a Rhythm Heaven stage. While that does make this level a delightfully stressful challenge on perfect runs, on a casual level it just drags on in my opinion. I do quite like the remixed music and visuals though. The space skybox and random camera pans make things way more visually interesting than the first. As a whole, Rhythm Rally is a fun time that's brought down by its repetitive nature and subpar theming. This is a minigame I thought I liked way more, but as I drafted the ranking and put down my thoughts, I couldn't bring myself to put it any higher. It feels like a very standard stage, but that's okay, because this series' standard of quality is amazing. Now freeze frames got some of that extra pizzazz I looked for in my rhythm games. In this one, you have to time your inputs to take pictures of the speeding cars. This one is immediately interesting because of how fast the cars go by. You're pretty much required to rely on audio cues to time your taps. That gives this stage a bit of a steep learning curve for Rhythm Heaven standards, but man is this one satisfying to get the hang of. The sound design does so much to bring it all together. But as much as I love the gameplay here, it unfortunately gets pretty repetitive, which seems to be a trend for all the games in this tier, huh? There are basically only 2 car patterns to remember, and you just work with those for the whole level. Eventually, they tried to obscure the background, but the visual cues weren't very helpful anyways, so it's whatever. Speaking of visuals, the aesthetics don't do much for me. The music uses pretty repetitive melodies that enhance the gameplay a good amount, but isn't the best on its own. I do appreciate all the first game cameos though, and I like TJ Snapper's design. The gameplay of Freeze Frame is a major step up from the previous entries. I love its emphasis on using audio cues, but the repetitive execution and subpar aesthetics in my eyes hold it back. Tambourine is yet another copycat stage where you repeat the, well, tambourine patterns the monkey does. You get 2 inputs here, press A to shake, and A and B to clap. It's pretty basic, much like the recent copycat minigames, but I enjoy having 2 types of inputs to work with. The tambourine sounds make them both enjoyable, as well as the monkey's sound effects. The beat patterns they come up with are also solid, but nothing mind-blowing. The aesthetics are the real star of the show here. I jive with them quite a bit. While the visuals aren't much, just the series staple cute monkey and the player's hands, the music is an upbeat, cheery tune that makes the stage feel so good to play, in spite of its simplicity. It's the kind of song that just puts a smile on your face, you know? So for its solid mechanics and sweet music, I think Tambourine is a cut above the other copycat games we've discussed so far. Showtime is definitely one of the most obscure minigames in the series. You play as a monkey and have to launch these balls for the jumping penguins to catch, as part of the show. There are 3 types of penguins, each with different timings. They come in pretty quickly for the most part, and it feels real good to get the inputs down. The gameplay has this satisfying snappy quality to it. It's paced really well. I'm a big fan of the white penguins. They jump in the quickest, and the part at the end when they all come in back to back is good fun. But speaking of the end, what holds this one back is how short it is. In fact, I think it's the shortest rhythm game in the series, being 40 seconds long. It feels like Showtime ends before it's getting started, which sucks because this one never got a sequel. All we'll ever see of this minigame is just this one short stage, so it ends up pretty underwhelming. The music and visuals could also be better in my opinion. They're nothing memorable, just doing enough to enhance the experience as usual. As much as I do enjoy the gameplay here, it's all Showtime has going for it. With its short length and serviceable aesthetics, it doesn't leave a strong impression. In tongue lashing, you play as a lizard and you gotta time your tongue lashes to eat the flies. There's 2 types, making you time your inputs either 2 or 3 beats after the cue. What carries this one for me is the sound design. That whip crack sound effect for the tongue makes the stage so satisfying, especially near the end when the flies start coming in back to back. Once again, the back-to-back design kind of undermines the need to follow the cues, but it's still very fun regardless. The music is also above average. I like it on its own, and it synergizes with the gameplay real good. Timing those couple inputs to the beat drops never gets old. Tongue Lashing's incredible sound design elevates its otherwise simple gameplay to great heights, with solid music to boot. But at the end of the day, the mechanics and execution are still fairly simple, so this stage can only play so far. Nightwalk is a minigame most of you are probably familiar with from Fever. However, it first appeared in the GBA game, and I'm putting that version here. All you have to do is press A on each beat. This is the first keep the beat style minigame on the list. I much prefer these kinds of minigames as they require constant inputs with good rhythm, which is just inherently more engaging and satisfying. That alone puts Nightwalk pretty far up on this tier, but this is still the most basic iteration of that gameplay idea. That being said, there are still some quirks in the execution here. The stage explicitly tells you to fill the sky with stars, and you do this by hitting inputs. If you don't hit enough, the last block you need to clear the stage won't spawn. Every Rhythm Heaven uses an invisible scoring system, but it's so weird to me how this is the only minigame to make it kind of visible to the player. Speaking of weird, there are some gaps in the road, and if you miss those inputs, the stage just ends and you have to try again. Oh yeah, and did you know that the layout of the blocks in the middle of the stage is randomized? That's stuff I only found out while doing a bit of research for this video. These don't really add to the minigame, but they do fascinate me and I wanted to bring it up. I have a bit of a soft spot for how strange the first game can be. But still, this is a basic minigame to play. No twists get thrown onto the gameplay, so it can get a little boring, even if it's fun at first. What really keeps me coming back to Nightwalk are the vibes. This stage has one of my favorite songs in the GBA game. Like Tambourine, it makes this a feel-good minigame to play even though it's simple. The different sound effects adding percussion and whatnot as you hit the jumps is a great touch too. Also, if you decide not to press anything, it makes a sick beat. And that's not all, as this Nightwalk gets a sequel. This version actually takes advantage of the fact you can skip some inputs, adding in these fish that'll insta-kill you if you jump into them. I think it's a good addition, as they make you think about your inputs more carefully. It's a nice change of pace when the original gets too repetitive. It also complements the way the sound effects worked in the original. Nightwalk offers engaging gameplay with keeping the rhythm through the whole stage, but it stumbles a little with its lack of variety. Still, its amazing music and solid sequel always make this one a treat to revisit. In Catchy Tune, you gotta catch the fruit that's falling down the stairs. This one stands out by having 2 characters you play as, meaning inputs are spread across the D-pad and the A button, which I love to see. That turns what would be a very basic minigame into a much more interesting affair. There are only 2 fruit types to worry about, and they're pretty simple, but having to press the corresponding button, as well as how they may overlap, keeps this minigame engaging. That applies to both the first and second versions of this minigame, though of course more so for the sequel. But even with this gimmick, the execution here is pretty average. The fruits take a moment to bounce down the stairs, especially the pineapples. The inputs are also a little too spread out for my liking. I think the stage is at its best when it layers and staggers the cues, so I wish they did more with that idea. Anyways, the song in both iterations is great as well, and I like the 2 characters you play as. Their emote when they catch fruit and sink is really cute. Catchy Tune's 2-character gimmick is a fun one to play around with, but the slow pace of the inputs prevents it from being one of my favorites. I always found Exhibition Match to be one of the more unique minigames from Fever. In this one, you play as the batter and you just have to press A 5 beats after the pitcher throws the ball. The challenge comes from the fact that you can't see the ball and how the stage tries to mess up your concentration. Like I said before, I think it's fun to try and keep the beat in your head, and the sound effect of the bat hitting the ball makes for a great payoff if you do it right. The disruptions can be pretty fun too. They mostly take the form of the music getting all wonky. There's this one part that used to always throw me off when I was new, so I find that particular hit real satisfying to land. However, I don't think they push this disruption idea as far as they should. The most drastic distractions are zooming the camera way out and cutting the music, which become a lot less effective the more you play. I also wish there was more variety in the music, but it's surprisingly solid as is. I like all the ways the stage's motif gets remixed. It's a lot less repetitive than you'd expect. Overall, I think Exhibition Match offers a simple yet satisfying test of your rhythm to overcome. As part of the entire series, it isn't amazing, but it adds some variety to Fever's minigame selection, which I appreciate. And finally, the last game of the Like It tier is Sneaky Spirits. In this one, ghosts will inch forward and you have to shoot them on the 8th beat. The catch is that their audio cues and even the background music will gradually fade, meaning you'll have to keep track of them in your head. This minigame has the same gimmick as Exhibition Match, but I think it executes the idea better. The ghosts can speed up or slow down, which will constantly switch up the time you need to press A. Combined with the audio fading out, that makes for a much more dynamic and sometimes tricky challenge that I really like. And that's not to mention the aesthetics, which I also quite like. The music and visuals create this real moody setting that I love. I like the ghost design and sound effects too. Shooting them in the face or the nose or whatever with the slow-mo effect is pretty funny, though it's starting to get a little annoying the more I play the stage. It kinda disrupts the flow if I'm being honest. It really isn't a big deal, but it does hold back the gameplay a little bit. And I almost forgot, but Sneaky Spirits did get a sequel. Much like the other GBA games, it's nothing special, just the same stage with more sporadic ghost patterns. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that, it's just not that exciting. But minor nitpick, the sequel did get a pretty major aesthetic downgrade. The purple was so much nicer in my opinion. Sneaky Spirits perfects the gameplay idea of tracking the rhythm in your head. Its varied disruptions make for a fun minigame to revisit even when you've mastered it, and it's got some neat aesthetics as a bonus. This stage is very well designed, but I just find the next 60 rhythm games more fun. And that wraps up the rhythm games I like. Looking at all the entries in this tier, they tend to fall short with simple gameplay or subpar theming, which is to be expected for the ones on the lower end of the list. But the things they do get right are able to cover for the things they don't, which still makes them fun minigames to play from time to time. But now we're moving on to our next tier, the games I really like. This is when the minigames start getting, well, really good, so let's keep going. Let's kick off this tier with a few simple minigames that still stick out in my mind. First up is Spaceball. All you have to do is hit the baseballs that come at you, either 1 or 2 beats after they appear depending on the cue. The screen will also randomly zoom in and out to take away our visual cue. As someone who's able to keep the rhythm no problem, the gameplay isn't anything special to me. However, the consistent pace of the baseballs keeps the stage engaging. There's very little downtime in this one, which is great. Anyways, the real reason why I like this stage so much is the song. Those steel drums and synths make for such a cool, creative fusion of tropical and futuristic vibes, with that slick melody tying it all together. The music makes this stage way more enjoyable to play in my opinion, even though it doesn't have much going for it gameplay wise. Speaking of not having much going for it, Spaceball 2. This one is similar to the first, only now it gets faster over time. It can actually be pretty tricky to keep up with how fast it gets, so I find this one to be a fun alternative on occasion. Though once again, it's on the same level as the first in my eyes for its lack of originality. Last thing I want to mention, if you get a perfect on this one, your reward is this interview with the batter. When he's questioned about the different masks he wears during the minigame, he acts like he has no idea what's going on. I just find that hilarious. So with that, great music, and solid gameplay, I think Spaceball is endearing enough to make it into this tier, despite its simplicity. Big Rock Finish is a gimmicky minigame I'm quite fond of. In this one, you're part of a concert and have to play this guitar riff a few times. Why? Because the band's bedtime is coming up and they don't have enough time to play the full songs. Man, I love this series. So at face value, this minigame sounds pretty lame, but I think it's executed very well. The riff in question is fun to pull off thanks to the flick controls, and each round is played to a different tune and tempo. The rounds are even pseudo-randomized each time you play, which is a nice touch. The tunes are practically just jingles, but they're all great for what they are. Song C is always so exhilarating to pull off, and my favorite's probably H, in case you were wondering. Miscellaneous things I want to mention. I love the voices for all the ghosts, especially the deadpan "Thank you" after each round. A neat touch is that the drummer ghost is accurately animated to play each jingle. And of course, Remix 7 in DS being the full version of one of the songs in this minigame is such a cool idea. That last one doesn't affect the ranking, I just had to mention it. Big Rock Finish executes its out there gameplay idea surprisingly well through its use of the flick, and makes it shine with great music and humor. Next up is the first iteration of the recurring samurai slice. As the wandering samurai, you have to slice the monsters that come towards you. Eventually, you'll have to deal with 2 at a time, faster speeds, and reduced visibility. Much like the last 2 entries, this minigame is simple, but it stays engaging thanks to all those extra factors that gradually come in. I especially like having to slice 2 monsters in a row. That sound effect makes it so satisfying. The tempo going up after each slice also turns the stage into a hectic but fun challenge to keep up with. However, having to repeat the same pattern over and over in each half of the stage can get pretty uninteresting. That brings me to the music, which is honestly below average. It's surprisingly subdued, at least until it speeds up, but even then, it's underwhelming to me with how it constantly uses that one short melody. The first samurai slice can sometimes get too repetitive, but its fast pace and great sound design keep it enjoyable. Now, it's finally time to talk about the very first rhythm game, the original Karate Man. I'm not gonna lie, I mostly have this one so high up because of its legacy. When you boil it down, it's perhaps the most simple minigame in the series, and well, it had the job of introducing Rhythm Heaven to the world, if the world was just Japan. You already know how Karate Man stages work, simply punch the flower pots coming at you. While basic, it just feels good to get into the rhythm of this one. The random objects that show up also get a chuckle out of me from time to time. Strangely, this version has this flow meter on the side. As you hit stuff, the meter goes up, and when it reaches 3, you'll be able to hit those rocks. If you don't have enough flow, then Karate Joe will hurt his hand. This is such an odd inclusion to me as it can just deny some of your inputs, but the stage is so easy that it ends up being inconsequential. So much so that it was removed in the Megamix remake. It's basically a relic of how experimental the first Rhythm Heaven can be. Last thing to mention is the music. This is our very first vocal track to appear on the ranking, and spoilers, the vocal tracks are one of my favorite things in the series. They're all so memorable due to how few there are, and how they're almost always the best songs in their respective games. The song for Karate Man, which doesn't have a name as far as I'm aware, is probably the weakest vocal track in the series, but I still really like it. The lyrics kind of embody the spirit of the series, what with all the talk about improving your rhythm. It's what makes the basic gameplay feel so good. The vocalist is also real cute to listen to. As for the sequel, it's almost identical to the original. The only difference is that the game randomly speeds up and down. This can actually be kind of disorienting, and since missing an input resets the flow meter, that mechanic suddenly becomes important. Who am I kidding, this stage doesn't add much for me. The music was most of the original's appeal, so hearing it get all distorted in this version isn't very enticing. The original Karate Man is a minigame whose rank I might be inflating, but who cares, it's my list. For its iconic status and sweet music track, I couldn't have in good faith put this in a lower tier, so let's leave it at the bottom of this one and move on. In Toss Boys, you play as a group of kids tossing a ball around. Each kid is mapped to the D-pad, A, and B, and you'll have to press the right button to keep the rally going. Each kid also has their own special move that they'll randomly use. It can be pretty overwhelming to learn since the tutorial will throw everything at you, but once you get the hang of it, it's a very fun minigame. The variety is naturally great with how many input types there are, as well as how they're spread across the buttons. The stage makes good use of these mechanics too. While you play, the ball feels like it gets passed around at random. Likewise, when the special moves get used also feels unpredictable. This makes for an engaging gameplay loop as you gotta stay on your toes to react to everything with good timing. However, I think there's one big factor holding it back, and that's the aesthetics. The music is really bland. It's way too repetitive and lacks synergy with the gameplay. Sometimes the D-pad guy will destroy the ball in sync with the music, which is pretty sweet, but outside of that, the inputs feel kind of arbitrary. You just don't get that satisfaction of the gameplay and music intensifying together as you progress here. Toss Boys does have a sequel, but in classic GBA fashion, it's just the same thing but slightly harder. I like how it more frequently uses the special moves, but it has the same problems as the first, so it doesn't affect the ranking that much. I guess I'm sounding oddly negative for a minigame I said I really like, but overall, the gameplay is what Toss Boys excels in, so much so that it's able to bring it to this spot. But the minigame drops the ball on basically everything else in my opinion. The Dazzles. They got a pretty good rhythm game. In this one, your cube will go dark throughout the stage, and you'll have to hold and flick in time with the others. Sounds strange when I describe it out loud, but it's a real fun time. In the Mega Mix remake, the boxes will fill in and out, giving you a much better sense of when to press and release. The original doesn't have this assist, which I actually like way more. You really gotta feel the rhythm to get the timing right, which makes playing this one very satisfying, especially on the couple of trickier moments. I love getting those stars on perfectly timed flicks too. They make honing your rhythm as you play all the more engaging.
Still my heart goes la 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 dee da, singing for you. La la.
Even better is that the stage has a vocal track to its name. But much like Karate Man's theme, I think Love Ooh Ooh Paradise is one of the weakest in the series. It's a cute song, but the onomatopoeia bits are a little too goofy for my liking. So the Dazzles has great music and gameplay. What's holding it back? Well, as fun as it is, it can get repetitive. Most of the stage uses this 3-2-1 pattern, and there's little variation other than like one offbeat. The Dazzles also got a sequel, and it doesn't do much for me. Actually, it's a pretty notorious sequel for how it plays identically to the original. There are a couple instances where the cubes light up differently, but the flick timing is the same. Yeah, that sucks, but I still think the stage is overhated if you ask me. I'm more focused on the music, which is a bit of an upgrade to the original. The vocals are the same, but I prefer the new instrumentation here. It's a lot more punchy.
You told me dreams come true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So for that, I find this version slightly better than the original, if not completely unnecessary. The Dazzles is an above average minigame to me with its satisfying gameplay and cute vocal track, but it still has the repetitiveness problem we saw in the previous tier. In the Clappy Trio, you're part of a trio that claps. You're the third, so you just have to press A to clap in time with the others. I find the core gameplay engaging because of how slow the patterns tend to be. Like the Dazzles, you gotta feel the rhythm to do well in this one, which I like. I also really like the song. It's a surprisingly chill track, almost making this one kind of relaxing to play. It goes with the slower clap patterns perfectly. The Snappy Trio is a great sequel to the original. We now got a brassy rendition of the theme and much faster clap patterns. It loses a lot of that feeling the rhythmness of the original because it's so much faster, but that's not a bad thing. Some of the sections here are non-stop, which is fun in its own right. The one super fast clap near the end is such a memorable way to cap off this minigame. It's funny how you won't see it coming since there's no indication they'll just go like zoop, but I still love that moment a lot. Miscellaneous things to mention, I love the Clappy Trio themselves. They're really cute, and I don't throw that word around lightly. I swear I'm not trying to sound edgy, you guys know what I mean, right? The smile they do after a successful input is a wonderful form of feedback too. And while the sound design on GBA is good, I want to highlight the clap sound effect in the Clappy Trio's Fever and Megamix remakes. It's much more satisfying there. Oh, and shout out to the mysterious 4th Clappy Trio member from GBA Remix 1. Anyways, both Clappy Trios are great rhythm games that offer different takes on a simple but satisfying gameplay loop. Sick Beats makes it into the top 53 for its name alone. Just kidding, but it's gotta be one of the best in the series, right? In this rhythm game, viruses will travel through these pipes, and you have to time D-pad inputs to pierce them as they zoom by. This one is really satisfying to play. Using solely your sense of rhythm to stop the viruses dead in their tracks, since there isn't really a visual cue in this one, just feels so good to pull off. Of course, the sound effects help make the gameplay feel as good as it does too. Having to press the right direction on the D-pad is also a unique touch. Though, like Toss Boys, I think it falters with its pacing. The viruses come in at functionally random, and the song is short and repetitive. I really like the song, and it greatly suits the minigame, so it's not that big a deal. But still, this one can feel a little anticlimactic, if you will. I particularly wish the idea of layering the virus cues got used more. The chance to stab 2 at a time is my favorite moment here, but it only happens once. I think it's worth noting that this minigame got an endless version. Makes me wonder if this one was originally made as an endless game before being put into the main campaign, as the things I criticized are justified and even addressed in that version. But I'm only ranking the main minigame today, so that won't count. Sick Beats is still a great rhythm game all around with satisfying and unique mechanics to set it apart. In Monkey Watch, you play as a little monkey and have to high-five other little monkeys in time with the music. There's also these cool monkeys with a different timing to shake things up. This seems to be one of the more notorious stages in the series from what I can gather, but I don't know, I never had much trouble with it. I guess the cool monkeys can take a moment to figure out, but I think that's more due to the awkward way they're explained in the tutorial. Once you get the hang of it, it's a great keep the beat style minigame. The regular inputs can get a little boring, so the cool monkeys do a lot of the heavy lifting. They require you to press A twice in quick succession, which is really fun, especially near the middle of the stage where there's so many of them. The unique sound effect and particles go a long way at making those moments super satisfying. Speaking of the middle, that's when this stage puts a surprising emphasis on trying to obscure your vision. First is through zooming out the camera, which is a good bit. Reminds you that this is indeed a monkey watch, but then the second tries to block the high five animations. The visual cues in this one aren't helpful since the watch hand basically teleports forward, so I find this to be a very underwhelming gameplay twist. Lastly, as for the music, I don't have strong feelings for it one way or the other. Same goes for the theme. Monkey Watch takes the keep the beat gameplay format to the next level with its satisfying special input, but without it, I don't think there's anything that exceptional on offer here. Perhaps one of the most unsuspecting rhythm games in the series, Fireworks is one that really grew on me as I was drafting the ranking. All you have to do is detonate the different fireworks by pressing A at the right time. There's 3 types with different timings each. This minigame really shines when it starts overlapping the different cues, and thankfully it's not afraid to do so later on. It's super satisfying to set off the fireworks back to back. The pacing here is greatly done. Often, they'll be lined up in a way so that one input will set off all the ones on screen, which is easy, but who cares, it feels awesome to do. The music could be a bit more exciting, but the sound effects are on point. I'm quite partial to the myself. Not much else to discuss here. Fireworks is a simple rhythm game with very engaging execution and sound design. You know, looking at the full roster of rhythm games, it's pretty random that they decided to bring back Nightwalk of all things 2 games later, but I digress. This one plays just like the original, only now there are these spots that you roll on, requiring you to press and release A and B for a short moment. So why is this version placed fairly higher than the original? Well, that secondary mechanic adds quite a lot to Nightwalk for me. It's very satisfying to pull off thanks to the tight window and killer sound design. But as you could probably guess, the other reason it's higher is because it got a vocal track. Dreams of Regeneration is a phenomenal way to cap off the main game of Fever. It's not one of my personal favorites, but it's certainly up there thanks to that incredible vocal performance.
Let's spread our wings now into the sky now. Let's reach up to the sun. Soon we will see we're living the dreams of our generation. That's right.
However, as much as I love these two editions, it's still Nightwalk at the end of the day, simple as ever, so it can only make it so far. Next up is the DS version of Built to Scale, and compared to where I placed the Wii version, I certainly like this one a lot more. As the first minigame in DS, it focuses on the flick mechanic, making you time them to build the widgets. Like I said before, I find flicking to be a novel control scheme in its own right, but beyond that, each widget coming in with a musical scale is a fun and unique way to help you time your flicks, while also being audibly interesting. And just when things may start to get boring, the minigame speeds up and even covers the screen, forcing you to really focus on following the scale. It's by far the best first stage in the series, using easy to understand mechanics with enough difficulty to remain engaging on replay. And that's not all, as this stage got a sequel, cleverly being the first one in DS to introduce the concept. While this version does reuse the same music track from the first, it offers a better challenge with much more widgets coming at you. Some of these can catch you off guard with how fast they are. Everything else I said about the first applies here, making it just as good as the original, if not better. I guess thematically this minigame isn't that interesting, which does hold it back a bit, but the music gets pretty good in the second half, so the aesthetics aren't a complete miss. Overall, Built to Scale DS executes its simple idea perfectly with its audio synergy and gameplay twists. Okay, we got a bunch of rhythm games from Fever coming up, first of which is Seesaw. In this one, you have to hit A as your character hits the seesaw. The timing also changes a bit based on whether you're landing on the inner or outer part. Being the third minigame in Fever, it stays simple but enjoyable. Hitting the seesaw feels real good to do thanks to C and Saw's voice clips. They're honestly some of my favorites in Fever, and they do so much to enhance the experience. Later in the stage, you'll start flying off screen, but the timings remain the same. This part is the highlight for me. The visuals getting so over the top with the two shooting out these spiky particles as they land adds some incredibly satisfying impact to the minigame, with the song and speed intensifying to tie it all together. That ending is always so exhilarating to play, even though nothing's changed mechanically, which is very commendable. I also quite like the music for this one, though it being so intense makes the joke of inspecting the seesaw a lot less funny. I don't know, it just comes off as too forced. It's one of the few times where the series humor doesn't hit for me, but it's not a big deal. Seesaw makes the most out of its simple gameplay loop through amazing sound design, presentation, and pacing. In Micro Row, you play as a microscopic microbe and have to swim in sync with the others. You do this by pressing A every other beat. You'll also have to press A 3 beats in a row when you hear the associated cue. It's another keep the beat style minigame, and you should know why I like those by now. The secondary cue is a nice addition, but it can still get a bit boring with that being the only variation in the gameplay. What I like so much about this one is the music. It's one of the more memorable tracks in the series to me. I really dig the main melody in this one. It's what keeps the stage fun even when the gameplay doesn't hit. That's where the sequel comes in. Micro Row 2 adds a new special cue, this rapid double tap. It naturally gives the stage better variety, but this move is just so satisfying to do on its own. It's one of my favorite inputs in the series. Top it off with some sick new guitars to the music, and you got a sequel that's a considerable step up in every aspect. Actually, the theming is still the same and I don't jive with it that much. These microbes are not charming to me, like at all, but they don't detract from all the good Micro Row does. This rhythm game steps up the keep the beat formula yet again with great gameplay variety and catchy music. Finally, after almost 90 minutes, we've reached the halfway point of this list. Let's talk about Screwbot Factory. In this one, you're tasked with screwing the heads onto these robots. The white ones take 2 beats and the grey ones 3. I really like this screwing mechanic. You have to press A and B for every input, which adds a surprising level of impact to screwing each robot. It provides this unique sense of immersion, since the 2 buttons correspond to the 2 ends of the claw. It's a small detail, but I love it when the series tries to translate the actions to the controls like this. I also find this one kinda tricky. More often than I'd like to admit, I find myself letting go of the buttons too early. I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing. The sequel is great as well, mostly thanks to its higher difficulty, but this version does introduce a new gimmick with the lights going out. I think it's a smart addition. The visuals were very helpful in the original, so taking them away for a late game iteration makes for a good challenge. I especially love the part at the end where you build a bunch of white robots back to back. Oh yeah, and I didn't mention the music, but it's just alright for both versions. Nothing that memorable in my opinion, but it fits with the stage's gameplay. Other things to mention are that I love the voices for the Screwbots, and the reveal that they're actually giant is a great gag. Those factors definitely bump this minigame up a bit. Basically, Screwbot Factory is a much more engaging Philbots. Having robots that take a shorter amount of time to build helps give the stage a more consistent level of flow. Plus the aesthetics have a bit more personality, even if it's still a little bland with that white background. In Tap Troop, you have to tap along with your troop. It's another keep the beat minigame, the gimmick this time being this change up in rhythm. I don't know how to describe that change up, but it's really good. They can last for varying amounts of time, which keeps the idea fresh even though it's the only additional mechanic this level has. Those moments always end with a triple tap too, and it's pretty satisfying to swap back to the main rhythm. The final tap getting a whip crack sound effect is the cherry on top.
Ready and bum 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 tap tap ready and tap tap tap. Ready and tap tap tap.
The music is also great. It's a feel-good, cheery track that elevates the gameplay throughout the whole runtime. And of course, the ending gag revealing that the tappers are insanely tall is hilarious. It made me laugh out loud the first time I played this one. There's not much else for me to say about Tap Troop. It's a great keep the beat minigame with a fun and unique gameplay twist. Next up is another seemingly divisive rhythm game, Love Rap. The divisiveness seems to come from some finding the gameplay of this one too unintuitive. Now, apparently there is some rhythmic tomfoolery going on here, but that's completely over my head. In layman's terms, all you have to do is press A as soon as the MC finishes her line. Once you know that one simple trick, the challenge then comes from keeping up with and reacting to all the different lines you can say, and I quite enjoy that gameplay loop. This stage can turn into an engagingly hectic ordeal, especially if you're unfamiliar with it. Also, I just enjoy the core mechanic of timing your A press right as the line ends. It feels like such a tight window, which makes this one a lot of fun, even though it's probably more generous than I imagine.
All about you. Pretty into you.
I guess another thing people might not like about this level is the sound design. In an odd twist of fate, Love Rap is not a stage with a dedicated vocal track, even though it's like the most perfect fit for one in all of Fever. I get wanting to reserve them for Karate Man, the remixes and credits, but come on, this is like if Fan Club wasn't built around a vocal theme. Instead, what we get is a handful of lines constantly repeated throughout the whole level. I've definitely gotten used to it over the years, and it makes for some fun gameplay like I said, but it still feels a little cheap. And while on the topic of audio, I found the voice for the rapper you play as to be kinda bad. His faux shows are especially rough.
Crazy into you.
I don't have a problem with the English dub literally anywhere else in the series. I even think the other 2 characters in this level sound great. It's not that big of a deal, but it can sometimes take me out of the experience. Lastly, I want to discuss the aesthetics. I love the music track and setting for this one. The light rain it takes place in, combined with the song, gives off such a chill vibe only matched by Sneaky Spirits. And as for the sequel, Love Rap 2 is also great. It doesn't add or change anything, it's just more of the same but at a slightly higher difficulty, which is nice. I think I prefer the character designs and setting from the first, but I dig the new remix. Love Rap excels in its gameplay. It offers a fast and unique challenge with how its timings work, and great aesthetics as well. There's a bit of missed potential and mediocre dubbing in the audio department, but those don't detract from what this rhythm game does right. Also, shout out to MC Adore My Beloved. Speaking of fan club, in this rhythm game, you're part of a crowd of monkeys who want to cheer on this idol as she performs. As I alluded to earlier, this one has a full-on vocal track, and there are specific lyrics you gotta react to. When she says something 3 times, you clap 4 times, and I suppose results in this jump clap combo. The former is nothing special, but the latter is pretty fun on its own. I love how it combines normal taps with the flick. It makes good use of DS's control scheme. But, as solid as the mechanics are, having them be so closely tied to the lyrics results in awkward moments where you're just doing nothing for a moment. The stage makes up for it by having a cute music track to listen to in the meantime, but I still have some nitpicks with it. Again, since the music is directly tied to gameplay, that means the lyrics have to have a whole lot of I supposes and repeated words, which makes the song a bit awkward outside the context of the stage. And overall, it's just kinda underwhelmingly short. Which is why I'm happy to report that Fan Club 2 exists, fixes literally all of these problems, and is pretty much what carries this rhythm game to this spot. This iteration introduces this new action that isn't tied to the lyrics, which means much of that empty space from before is filled with something to do, not to mention how it just adds more variety to the minigame. I guess my problem with the lyrics having to fit in with the gameplay still persists, since the previous mechanics are unchanged, but hey, in the second verse, I suppose gets replaced with wonderful. The game doesn't tell you about this at all, which would be bad design, but it's hilarious to get completely blindsided by that on your first try, so it's fine. And yes, there's a second verse now, making this minigame feel much more substantial. Actually, the entire song got remixed, and I much prefer this new instrumentation. It focuses more on electronic instruments, and the part in between the 2 verses is so good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I suppose. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thrilling Is This Love, as the song is called, is about a girl who's smitten for someone and feels a bunch of overwhelming emotions. It's oddly very similar to the Dazzle's vocal track, down to the silly onomatopoeia bits. I know like every vocal track is about love in this series, but I wish the 2 songs were more distinct. I still really like this song for the above reasons, even if I think it's a pretty middle-of-the-road vocal track overall. Fan Club just might have the greatest jumping quality from its original to sequel in the entire series, and man does it pay off. I guess in the grand scheme of the series it's nothing that special, the gameplay can lack a sense of flow with how isolated the cues are, but regardless, this rhythm game will always stand out in my mind as one of the highlights from DS's selection. Next up is DJ School. In this one, you follow the instructions of DJ Yellow to stop and flick this turntable thingy. Right away, I want to give props to the humor of this rhythm game. Having a school that only teaches you how to become a DJ is funny enough as is, but they go a step further and say the school only teaches you how to look like a DJ and not actually be a DJ, which is just hysterical. Okay, but as for the gameplay itself, it's pretty simple. DJ Yellow has a couple of cues for when to touch and hold. Then, you flick at the right moment. It's a stage that's definitely elevated by the touch controls of DS. It gives the minigame that sort of immersive quality I was talking about with Screwbot Factory. Also, for the cue to release, you're supposed to flick 1 beat after the audio finishes. That makes those moments real satisfying, since you gotta feel the rhythm to time it right, in addition to creating a good sense of build-up. The cues for when to start holding are just fine though. There's 2 of them, but they feel identical to work with. Those flicks are the main highlight here.
And stop. Scratch. And stop. Check it out. Scratch.
Moving on to sound, the record scratches and music distortions when you hold the turntable are fun and add to the impact I was praising. However, everything else I'm pretty indifferent towards. The music itself is whatever, as well as the visuals. I know a lot of people love DJ Yellow's wacky voice, but it never grabbed me personally. I do like the hands up pose he does when you time your flick right. Combined with that silver box effect thing, they make successful inputs even more satisfying. So, in the end, DJ School absolutely nails its humor. The gameplay, while simple, is still plenty of fun, but the forgettable music prevents me from placing it much higher. In Board Meeting, you play as a pig spinning in a swivel chair. You'll have to stop yourself in time with the others, either one at a time or all at once when the assistant here says so. The game frames this as like a presentation for some company, but I don't know, that context and gameplay still feels so disconnected, even for how zany the series can get. So the theming completely misses the mark for me. Fortunately, I find the gameplay real fun. This stage is basically a souped up version of the Clappy Trio. It's generally much faster paced, and that secondary maneuver adds a great pinch of variety. The sound effects make it very satisfying to get the timings down, especially that slam for the second move.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
These changes take an old formula and make it feel fresh again, which is pretty cool. The music is also pretty catchy, and it greatly fits with the gameplay. It drastically enhances the second half of the stage. I like that part a lot. My only nitpick is that it's a little short for Fever standards, but I still think we get enough out of its ideas. Board Meeting is simple, but it excels at everything it sets out to do, just with its out there theming holding it back. Figure Fighter sees you controlling the muscle doll. You gotta time your A presses right to punch the sandbag. This one's greatest strength is its gameplay. There's a whopping 4 types of cues to worry about. That gives this stage a lot more variety than your average rhythm game, which is obviously a plus. The quick 1-2 punch is my favorite once again. The rest of the inputs are nothing special, but the way the stage uses each fairly evenly keeps things engaging. There's some good flourish here too. Certain inputs will cause the sandbag to break, and hearing the chains scatter makes you feel really strong. The crowd cheers in the middle of the stage also adds so much to the game feel.
And jab, jab, jab. And 1, 2, and jab, jab. Go, go, go! And jab, jab, jab.
However, I'm not super into everything else about this stage. The music complements the gameplay, but it isn't my favorite in a vacuum. And I'm pretty indifferent towards the idea of playing as a fighter the size of a figure. As for the sequel, Figure Fighter 2 takes the OG and makes it a lot better. It uses the single punch on a bunch of offbeats, which makes that basic input much more interesting. The complicated section in the middle is especially great. The way the inputs there are strung so closely together makes for an incredibly satisfying segment. Playing it perfectly is a thrill that never gets old.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And 1, 2, 1, 2. Go, go, go! And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And 1, 2, 1, 2. Go, go, go! And jab, 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 jab.
So yeah, I much prefer this iteration for its increased complexity. Both figure fighters are stages with fun gameplay and difficulty curves, but the theming is just so not for me that I can't place it much higher. That gameplay is doing some serious heavy lifting here. True to its name, in Shoot 'em Up, you'll shoot down a bunch of space invaders, with rhythm of course. This is done in copycat fashion. The aliens will appear in a certain pattern, and you have to repeat it to properly shoot them. I find this to be one of the better executions of the copycat idea. It doesn't rely on a unique mechanic like Moai Doo-Wop, which sounds worse on paper, but I ultimately think it's a positive. It allows the patterns to get pretty complicated, and the moments where they do are the highlight. Plus, this minigame just has better feedback. You tap the screen and boom, you see the aliens blow up, letting you know you did it right. It's simple, but it makes the core mechanic feel good to play with, which is something Moai Doo-Wop struggled with in my opinion. Shoot 'em Up has some sweet aesthetics too. I'm a sci-fi guy, so I'm quite partial to the space theming here. The music is naturally repetitive due to the copycat gameplay, but I still really like it. It has some memorable sections. Last thing to talk about is the sequel. For some reason, it starts with the final round of the original, which is kind of lame, but after that, it gets surprisingly difficult, and I love it. Round 2 has these super tight inputs, and round 3 has some offbeat shenanigans too. Those will really catch you off guard your first time, and are tough enough to still trip you up on replay. Round 2 is especially fun to revisit. It's a great iteration that pushes the original's ideas to their limits. Overall, Shoot 'em Up has a lot going for it, with a great execution of its main idea, solid difficulty, and cool aesthetics. Bossa Nova sees you bumping these random shapes with your partner. The left and right sides have a different rhythm, and you'll occasionally switch between them. Bumping these blocks is pretty fun on its own, but the patterns stay the same throughout the entire stage. The gimmick of switching between them is why the gameplay here shines. The swaps happen quite sporadically, which keeps you on your toes. It's a fun cycle to keep up with. That click sound effect when you swap is extremely satisfying. It makes those moments more fun than you would expect. But honestly, what makes this minigame stand out are once again the vibes. The song for this one is so uniquely mellow. It's one of my favorites from Fever. It just feels nice to sit back and chill with the stage. The visuals also add to the lax vibe, with how you're slowly ascending through this jungle. So for an engaging gameplay loop and immaculate atmosphere, Bossa Nova earns its spot on the upper half of my ranking. In Flockstep, you're part of a crowd of birds. You'll have to march to the beat, occasionally holding A and B to do this other squat move thing. It's a simple keep the beat minigame on paper, being brought up by its execution. The stomps have a unique, yet real satisfying feel to them thanks to the sound effects. The same applies to the secondary move. That squawking sound effect is delightfully wacky. The stage also makes good use of these mechanics. This part where the squat move is used back to back is really fun to pull off. It can get a little repetitive since that secondary move doesn't alter the marching rhythm, but that's really just a nitpick. Moving on, the music in this stage is above average to me. It goes with the gameplay really well, and is one of the more memorable tracks from Fever thanks to its progression. And of course, I'd be remiss not to mention the part where the camera zooms out through the bird's eye. I don't have anything to add, that's just hilarious. Overall, Flockstep stands out through amazing sound design and music synergy. My whole life I thought this rhythm game was called Packaging Pests, and just realized while editing it's actually Packing Pests. I'm gonna keep saying packaging, that rolls off the tongue way better. Anyways, in this one, you have to catch the incoming candy and swat away the spiders. Sometimes 2 spiders will come in at once to shake things up. This one has a pretty unique gameplay loop compared to the others. The candies and spiders will come at you constantly, so you get into this specific rhythm of catching and swatting. The double ups also provide a sporadic, satisfying bit of variety to that rhythm, and having to press A and B to catch the candies adds a perfect dose of impact. All this combined makes for a very engaging stage to play. There's never a dull moment here. I'm not really into everything else about Packaging Pests though. Having this obtuse way of sorting candy from spiders, and the implication that candy commonly has spiders in this universe, are kinda funny, but once I got over it, the theming is just kind of whatever. And I'm not super into the song for this one either. Packaging Pests does get a sequel, and it makes the gameplay substantially more fun. Now we have these hiccups in the rhythm on occasion. I love this addition, it's a very satisfying mechanic to deal with, mostly due to the sound effect, but more variety is always a plus. The faster tempo ties it all together, making it one of my favorite stages to play in Fever.
Double up. Double up. Double up.
However, the aesthetics still don't do much for me. The nighttime office is kind of unique I guess, but I'm pretty indifferent to the new music. That being said, I really enjoy the gameplay of Packaging Pests, and the sequel's changes make it even more engaging. It's so good that it's able to make it this far on the ranking, but the theming still holds it back a lot in my eyes. Ringside is easily the most iconic rhythm game in the series. I always thought it was weird that this of all stages got so popular, but after taking a closer look at it for the ranking, I totally get it. I'll save the aesthetic talk for the end though. Here, you play as a wrestler who's agreed to a post-match interview. You have a solid 3 types of cues to work with. They're pretty simple, but the sequence is very satisfying to do on its own. Instead, the pacing of these inputs is what makes the gameplay so fun. The cues are almost always coming at you one after the other, so the stage stays engaging even though the mechanics aren't super interesting on their own. The level also has great music synergy, that pose for the fans into the final section being the highlight. I'm not really into the song on its own, but it's not a big deal when it enhances the gameplay as much as it does. So gameplay wise, Ringside is already above average. What makes it shine even more is its theming. This stage takes the random but grounded idea of an interview and goes absolutely wild with it. The reporter's gibberish, the wrestlers, the sporadic pose for the fans. The reporter's also super cute, that goes without saying. Everything about this rhythm game is so bizarre but endearing, even more so for Rhythm Heaven standards. It feels cliché to say, but it genuinely feels like the perfect microcosm of what the series is, and I love this minigame because of that. At a glance, it doesn't look like there would be anything exciting about Ringside, but this stage is a case of exceptional execution and charm. It only sits just shy of my personal favorites for its lack of mechanical depth. And now, at the very top of this tier is Bouncy Road. That probably sounds like a random pick, but let me explain. In this one, these balls will travel along this curved path, and you have to press A in the D-pad to keep them bouncing. It sounds pretty boring, but it's yet another case of great execution. The balls come in a bunch of different ways. Some come in fast, some slow, and some back to back. I find this variety to be a lot of fun, and the back-to-back ones give me more trouble than I'd like to admit. Having to press two separate buttons to keep the ball bouncing is also just a fun and unique mechanic to play with. What makes it even better is the sound. The music for this level has this sense of frantic fun that fits the gameplay so well, and when it slows down, it builds this sweet, contrasting sense of suspense. That's not to mention the chimes for when you time your inputs right. It's all very effective. The only thing this minigame is missing is an interesting theme. The still shot of this road is pretty boring, and I wouldn't blame someone for dismissing this one because of that. But I'm willing to forgive the lame theming because of the sequel. Bouncy Road 2 takes everything I love about the original and cranks it up to 11. The back-to-back balls are much more frequent, and so many of them overlap. This makes Bouncy Road even more engaging than it already was. The way all the cues come together when it's finally time for your input is so satisfying, especially since they'll usually be at different speeds or offbeat. So for having great gameplay, music synergy, and a unique mechanic, Bouncy Road stands a cut above the rest, just barely missing out on the tier above for its lackluster theming. And that wraps up the Really Like It tier. As we got to the end, we started to see rhythm games I find excellent for the most part, but slightly miss the mark in one category. From here on, all the rhythm games are ones I would consider personal favorites. These are the minigames that excel in every single one of their aspects. But before we get to the truly exceptional ones, we have a few that I have a more acquired taste for. The first few entries of this tier will feature minigames I probably love more than the average person. First up is Tram and Pauline. In this one, you play as the titular characters who partake in a circus act. At the peak of their jumps, you press either A or the D-pad to have them transform. Much like Bouncy Road, it sounds simple, but stands out for its unique control scheme. It's basically the same idea as Catchy Tune, but I think this minigame executes it significantly better. You'll have to press the buttons one at a time, back to back, at the same time, all at a pretty swift pace. Something about the way all these patterns are strung together really clicks with me. There's some super fun sections here. The time between the cue and your input is only one beat, so the minigame stays engaging throughout its entire runtime. Everything else in Tram and Pauline is good, but could be a bit better. The sound effects for springing off the trampoline and transforming are serviceable, but they don't make these actions as satisfying as they could be. I still enjoy them though. Same goes for the music. It fits the gameplay well, but it's just missing something. Maybe its length, as this minigame is painfully short, one of the shortest in the series at around 40 seconds. I think the stage does do a lot in its short runtime, but I can see how this one would be super forgettable for some. But that's not how I view this stage. Tram and Pauline's got a simple but unique gimmick with a very satisfying execution. It's always a fun one to come back to whenever I revisit the first game. Next up is a rhythm game I bet most people forget about, Airborder. This one is special as it plays alongside the credits in DS, so it doesn't take up a normal stage slot. Fever did this too, but I really appreciate how, at least the way I see it, the only reason Airborder is treated this way is so that DS can have just as many brand new rhythm games as its predecessor, which is a great attention to sequel scope. Anyways, onto the minigame itself. You play as an airboarder and all you have to do is tap to duck under these blocks. Sometimes you'll have to hold after ducking and flick to jump. It's simple, but unlike the past 10 or so entries, it honestly isn't that fun. The inputs are just too spread out from each other. There's a bit more going on in the second half, like the random camera pans to remove the visual cues and that one offbeat, but the stage's slow pacing really undermines those twists. That being said, this is still rhythm heaven, so even basic mechanics are quite enjoyable. The flick once again does a lot of work to make the jumps pretty satisfying. But if you're familiar with the stage, you know the real reason why it's so high up. Airborder has a vocal track to its name, and That's Paradise is one of my favorite songs in the series. Top 5 honestly. It has such a triumphant and loving vibe, fitting for what doubles as the credits theme. It's such a feel-good track that never fails to put a smile on my face.
We made our way out of long, long darkness, and we made it this far, such a long road. So let's go, shining all the way. Oh, we're on our own path now. We can take it anywhere that we wanna go.
Lastly, I also want to highlight the Megamix remake for this one. I think it looks way better. Of course, the models are higher quality, but the animations are a major step up. They have a much cooler idle pose, and the way they bob up and down to the music looks way less clunky. It doesn't affect the ranking, I just wanted to shout out the glow up. So while Airborder has average gameplay, it more than makes up for that by having such an incredible song tied to it. That's enough for me to consider this stage one of my favorites. In Frog Hop, you play as a background dancer to a musical performance. Let's get the obvious out of the way and praise the music first. This stage features yet another vocal track, and I think Young Love Rock and Roll is one of the better ones from DS. The vocalist has such a unique timbre to his voice, making it real fun to listen to beyond the catchy rock and roll.
Kids these days, they just worry too much. Don't you know that that is just so square?
It definitely elevates the stage, but I still love the gameplay here on its own, so let's take a look. You have to tap the screen on each beat, and occasionally you'll be given a special cue. There's 3 of those, and they're naturally the highlight of the minigame. The triple tap isn't the most exciting, but I love the way the temporarily breaks the flow of that constant tapping. It's really satisfying to do that quick double tap, wait a bit, and then get back into the main rhythm. Lastly, the spin move is just plain fun thanks to its use of the flick and the voice line. The spinning animations and the fact that it's always used at the most pivotal moments of the song certainly help too.
Come on, let's dance. You know it's only rock and roll. Boys and girls, let's see you really shake it up now. Hey, come on.
These special inputs make the gameplay near perfect. However, there's a few prolonged moments without them, and they bring down the experience. Because of those empty sections, this stage can feel a little too long, especially with that part before the final chorus. That doesn't detract too much from the fun I have with everything else though. Frog Hop also gets a sequel, called Jumping Jazz in Megamix for a good reason. The vocals are replaced with a saxophone, and I love me some good saxophone. But the vocals were so good in the original that I ultimately like this new song about the same, which is to say, a lot. Anyways, the only gameplay difference is the faster tempo. That makes the gameplay of this iteration a good amount better as you get to those more engaging moments more frequently, avoiding that emptiness problem I was just talking about. Plus, it makes the triple tap a surprisingly tight input, which is fun. However, it's just as long as the original, so the faster tempo can make this one exhausting to play. Having the chorus repeat like 3 times near the end feels especially repetitive. The gameplay and music are still great enough to make up for that, but I wish this sequel was a bit shorter. That extra chorus at the end really doesn't add anything. So overall, while both Frog Hops somewhat overstay their welcome, they still have a lot to love with their music tracks and engaging gameplay. Definitely enough for me to call them favorites. Next up is Polyrhythm. This is the original source of those widget shenanigans and it's by far the best. Why? Well, as the name suggests, this minigame introduces the concept of polyrhythms to the player during the last third of the sequel. I'll be real with you, this one is hard carried by its second iteration, but let's start with the original and work our way there. This time around, the cylinders will roll forward, and you gotta press A in the D-pad to bounce them to the end of the path. It has a lot of tram and poly and DNA with inputs being split between two buttons, which I like. When you have to start pressing the buttons at the same time or alternating is when it starts getting good, but the minigame's paced pretty slowly. By the time you get to the best parts, it's almost over. And yeah, these split inputs are all on beat, I guess you could say, so they're technically not true polyrhythms. Even though this stage has a gimmick I like, Polyrhythm 1 isn't anything groundbreaking because of its basic execution. Without its sequel, this minigame would plummet to the 70s or 60s of my ranking. But as for Polyrhythm 2, this is hands down the most challenging stage in all of Rhythm Heaven by a long shot. It's tough to get even an okay rating on this one. You know, the baseline passing score. It starts out as easy as the original, just at a faster tempo, but then it all comes crashing down when the actual polyrhythms come into play. Again, I'm not a music guy, so I don't know how to describe it, but it's like you're playing two different games at once. It's so disorienting at first, but once you get the hang of it, it is the most rewarding experience the series has to offer. Being able to consistently get a superb rating on a level that took several minutes just to pass, there simply isn't anything else like it in the series, and I adore Polyrhythm 2 for its difficulty alone. Though, I have to admit, Polyrhythm is below average in everything else. I was never into this green grid aesthetic, and the music is pretty bad for Rhythm Heaven standards, said music being a short loop that isn't even that good. At the very least it fits with the gameplay, but honestly, what minigame doesn't have serviceable music synergy? So Polyrhythm turned out to be the messiest game to rank on this list. The sequel has some of my favorite gameplay in the entire series, but it's relegated to such a small section, and that's not to mention the overall whateverness of Polyrhythm 1 and the aesthetics. If it had more appealing theming and music, it would easily make my top 10. But regardless, Polyrhythm is undoubtedly one of my favorite rhythm games for how challenging its sequel is, and the experience that comes with mastering it. In Bluebirds, you gotta train your beak for something. I got nothing to say about the premise for this one, I just like it. You have two types of inputs here, the triple tap and flick. These mechanics are fun on their own, but I don't think the stage makes the best use of them. The triple tap is a little overused for my liking, and the pacing of the cues can be kinda slow. The big exception, of course, is that ending. The back-to-back flicks and music synergy make it a very satisfying way to cap off the stage.
Stretch out your neck, stretch out your neck, stretch out your neck.
But even with that moment, Bluebirds 1 is just alright to me, which means the highlight is once again the sequel. Bluebirds 2 uses the same mechanics in more interesting ways. Now, the triple taps will occasionally be layered over each other, which makes for more engaging moment-to-moment gameplay.
Take your beat, take your beat, take your beat, take your beat.
Other than that, it's largely the same outside of the faster tempo. The speed increase does do a lot to improve the pacing and difficulty, at least until the end. That final sequence is pure Rhythm Heaven perfection. It feels so climactic, and it's a ton of fun to time so many flicks back to back.
Stretch out your neck, 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 stretch out your neck.
Bluebirds is kind of in a polyrhythm situation for me. The reason I love this minigame so much is because of one section in the sequel, but man, that section is so good I can't justify putting it any lower. Of course, the rest of the gameplay being solid also helps. I'm personally not into the bird military gag, but I see the appeal. I don't really care for the music in both iterations, however they fit the minigame well and are a big part of what make the finales so good. I do love the captain with his slick shades and random screams in his dialogue though. Overall, Bluebirds is a rhythm game that greatly excels in its gameplay, particularly in its sequel, with my personal indifference to the theming holding it back. If Ringside is the most iconic rhythm game in the series, then Glee Club is perhaps the second most. In this one, you play as a chorus kid and have to shout in time with the others. What immediately stands out to me is the control scheme. In pretty much every other rhythm game, you input only when the game asks you. Here, however, your character will constantly be shouting, and you have to hold the touchscreen to close the app. You'll only let go to sing with the others, basically the inverse of all the other minigames. It's a smart way to translate the gameplay to the controls, and like I mentioned, I really love it when the series does this. But as for the stage itself, it's a ton of fun. It starts out a little slow and basic, but it gradually twists the mechanics, like requiring you to shout for longer stretches or twice in a row. Those moments are when the stage starts to shine. I like how you're eased into these complex maneuvers by watching the others do them first. It's a well-designed challenge. There's also this scream move you do by flicking the screen, and oh my goodness, it is so fun to do. The use of the flick, the animation, the sound effects, and timing the tap to close your yap again, it's all a match made in heaven.
Together now.
I wish it was used more often, but those moments drastically enhance the level's fun factor for me. It's one of my favorite single actions in the series. As for the theming, I really like the song for this stage. It's another chill song that I love in a vacuum, but with the featureless white plane and the unhinged screams of the chorus kids, it makes for such a memorable presentation. Glee Club 2 is just as great as the original, just with more varied shout patterns to deal with. I especially love this moment where the shouts get layered. The beach setting and remix are cool, but I think I slightly prefer the original's theming. I don't have much else to say about this sequel. It's more of the same but with a bit more challenge, which I love to see. Lastly, I didn't know where to put this, but I love how the conductor is a member of the Clappy Trio, fitting for what's essentially a more complex version of that minigame. Overall, Glee Club is a fantastic rhythm game with memorable aesthetics and unique use of the touch mechanics. In Rat Race, you run along this table to make it to some cheese. Every so often, you'll have to hide from this cat by holding A, then take off when the coast is clear, all with good rhythm, of course. I find this to be one of the harder stages in the series, surprisingly enough, but much like Polyrhythm 2, getting the hang of it after multiple attempts is so gratifying. I also just love the core mechanic of stopping and going. There's very few audio cues in this one, with the focus instead being on visual cues. Normally I prefer it when you're encouraged to rely on audio, but I don't mind it here. The animations are pretty snappy, so you still have to consider the rhythm everyone moves at to guide your inputs. Unlike, say, Hole in One, where the animation is so detailed. It's a fun change of pace, with the last stretch of the level pushing this idea to its limit. The sound design greatly enhances the experience too. I love the ricochet sound effect for when the mice take off. That makes this cartoonish minigame rightfully silly. The song also helps with setting the tone, fittingly being like the goofiest track in the series. Lastly, I want to give some props to the Megamix remake of Rat Race. It adds several new audio cues, which makes it easier to get the hang of this one. Even though there's such subtle changes, they make the original kinda hard to go back to. Well, that would be the case if not for this sign. Having it be part of half the stage instead of just the tutorial removes too much of the difficulty for my liking. But tangent aside, Rat Race is a surprisingly challenging minigame with delightfully goofy presentation. It's easily one of my go-tos from the GBA selection. This might be the most overrated rhythm game on the list, but putting it lower just felt wrong. Bunny Hop is a simple one. All you gotta do is press A each beat to jump on the animals. The gimmick is that occasionally the bunny will get launched, making you rest for 2, 4, or 8 beats. As a keep the beat minigame with a brisk tempo, it's naturally engaging to play. The sound effects for each input give the song some satisfying percussion, and the song itself is really good. Those make the stage even more enjoyable. The rests honestly don't change much, but I enjoy having to keep the beat in my head. I guess the theming doesn't do much for me, but with how much fun I have with the gameplay and sound, I can look past that. Bunny Hop is so simple, yet very satisfying in practice. I don't know what else to add, I just get a real kick out of this one. In Crop Stomp, you're tasked with harvesting crops, through stomping. When you stomp near a crop, it'll shoot upward, then, with good timing, you have to flick to collect it. This stage is once again a case of exceptional execution. The core mechanic of stomping has such a satisfying impact thanks to the screen shake and sound effects. I love the voices for the vegetables too, they're real charming. It's also a cute detail that they're the same ones from Rhythm Tweezers. And what ties it all together is the music. Such a groovy tune that does so much to make this stage into a series standout. That extra pizzazz definitely does some heavy lifting though, as the gameplay on its own leaves a bit to be desired. Constantly stomping and flicking can get pretty repetitive, but it's not a big deal since the stage is fairly short. There are these moles that appear near the end which have a slightly different timing, however. That helps shake things up and it makes for a great finisher. Overall, Crop Stomp is a really fun time thanks to its satisfying mechanics and music, but it still sits a smidge below the cream of the crop for its lack of variety. It's been a long while since we last saw a Megamix original. There's a lot less of them, but when they hit hard. Pajama Party is the weakest of these heavy hitters, but man do I love this one. All you gotta do is press A to jump alongside these monkeys. There's also this pillow throw and sleep maneuver thingy. It's a good amount of variety and fun for what it is, but the gameplay is nothing groundbreaking in the grand scheme of the series. Well, outside of that sleep input, I still barely understand it. Anyways, if you've played this one before, then you already know why it's so high up. It's the vibes. The concept of a pajama party with a bunch of monkeys is so charming and whimsical. I love it so much. This stage's song is also another one of my favorites. The main melody being sung in do's and da's is pure bliss to listen to, not to mention how unique it is for the series. That part where you throw your pillow and everyone's outfit changes never fails to put a smile on my face. This is easily the second most feel-good stage in the series, and that alone makes it one of my favorites in Megamix. Pajama Party is a simple rhythm game with incredible presentation. If it had more compelling gameplay, then it would easily make the top 5. Next up is the DS iteration of Karate Man. These take the baseline gameplay from GBA and throw in a new special move. In DS, Karate Joe will occasionally have to kick barrels with bombs in them by flicking. The standard flower pot punching isn't that remarkable, much like the original, even with the occasional offbeat, but the barrels do spice things up quite a bit. They aren't super tricky, but still fun thanks to the sound design and use of the flick. I love Karate Joe's smirk whenever you kick them too. So the gameplay is only marginally improved compared to GBA. Why is this one so much higher? It's because of the music. Struck by the Rain is easily one of my favorite vocal tracks in the series. It's in my top 5 alongside That's Paradise. This game started the trend of Karate Joe listening to oddly depressing breakup songs during his stages, so the lyrics in this one end up being so striking and memorable. The vocalist's performance is phenomenal and it sells the mood. I'll never forget my jaw dropping as I heard it for the first time.
Rain falls on me, and now I'm walking away. Tell me, do you find me more beautiful now? I'm not the kind to let you watch as I cry. So I got to leave, I got to forget you. And so I hide myself away from the world. Leave behind the sorrow of a sad little girl. I thought that I had finally won at the game. You told me it just was for fun. I suppose that I was too young.
The song itself has such a funky beat, which makes it enjoyable to listen to despite the sad lyrics. I love this track so much. It's such a shame you have to listen to it through the crusty DS speakers, at least while you're playing. Much like its GBA counterpart, Karate Man DS got a sequel that I'm pretty indifferent to. The more complicated patterns are more fun as always, and the song is left mostly the same. It just has a new guitar-filled instrumentation. It's good, but I much prefer the synths of the original. The flick maneuver of Karate Man DS makes the mundane gameplay of its predecessor more engaging. Top it off with one of my favorite vocal tracks in the series, and it easily makes it this far. With how limited the selection of Megamix originals was, I really appreciate that they still made room for the series staple minigames. As for Super Samurai Slice, you're once again the wandering samurai slashing demons. It's pretty standard mechanically, except for these big guys that require you to hold and release B. This minigame makes its simple action super satisfying thanks to the sound effects. The way the demons explode into pixels is so good, especially when they come in back to back. And I can't forget to mention the art style. Megamix shook up the visuals for some of its minigames, and this is the most drastic of them all. It goes for this pixel aesthetic that unfortunately falls into the so retro variety, but it's fun, so whatever. The real highlight, however, is the sequel. The original kept things really basic and the song was honestly kinda mediocre, but this version pushes everything to its limit. The demons come in way more frequently, and often in groups, letting those sweet sound effects fill the speakers. There's also this moment where 4 appear and the samurai does this lightning move, which is like so random and hilarious and incredible at the same time. The music is also way better, faster, and noticeably very synced up with the gameplay. Their synergy here is top notch. All those changes make Super Samurai Slice 2 one of the most satisfying levels in the series. It's what brings this minigame so high on the ranking. Even though this iteration of Samurai Slice is simple, its incredible sound design and pacing make it basically flawless in my eyes. Oh yeah, and I love the thank you voice clip at the end.
Thank you.
Animal Acrobat is yet another amazing Megamix original. In this one, you play as a monkey in a circus and have to swing off of various animals. You do this by pressing and releasing A. It's once again a case of simple idea, fantastic execution. The different timings are admittedly pretty easy and a little repetitive, but it's still fun thanks to the sound design. That twirl sound effect into the whip crack is just ear candy. Every successful input here is immensely satisfying. Having to hold down A also gives the stage that immersive feedback I love to see. I really like the music for this stage too. It's got a catchy melody and funky instrumentation. It's a pretty memorable track to me. All Animal Acrobat is missing is just a bit better gameplay. Good thing it gets a sequel. Jungle Gymnast, as it's called, introduces these white monkeys with their own timing. They always appear back to back like this, and I really love how little time you hang onto the single monkey. The original also had these spotlights which gave you a very obvious visual cue. This version removes them, so if you relied on them too much, you kinda gotta relearn the minigame, which I think is cool. Having to rely on your sense of rhythm, as well as the better variety, make this version much more fun. Unfortunately, I much prefer the original's music. This remix doesn't hit the same with that new instrumentation. I get what they were going for, it fits the jungle setting, and it's still good. I just prefer the original. But hey, it's a good thing we're looking at these rhythm games as a whole. Animal Acrobat overall is one of my favorites for its amazing sound design, music, and gameplay, especially in the sequel. Flipper Flop is easily one of the standouts from Fever. In this one, you're a seal and you gotta flop alongside a few others. You'll have to press A on each beat, triple tap from time to time, and perform flipper rolls with A and B. Those flipper rolls are what make this one so good. The stage gradually has you do more and more of them as it goes on, which creates such a unique sense of build-up. It culminates with having you do 10 of them in a row, which is a ton of fun.
10 flipper roll. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, good.
Performing the flipper rolls themselves also feels good thanks to having to press 2 buttons. They mix with that triple tap beautifully, making this one of the most engaging stages, gameplay-wise, in the series. It feels like there's always something interesting going on. The pacing here is perfect. And as with all excellent rhythm games, what ties it all together is fantastic theming. Captain Tuck being super into his SEALs training is so endearing. His lines for calling out each flipper roll, counting them off, and additional praise after you complete a set are so good. They go such a long way at making the gameplay more satisfying.
5 flipper roll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, good.
The music for this stage is great too, and the way it progresses with the gameplay is immaculate. Flipper Flop doesn't get a sequel, which normally would be a bummer for a minigame I like so much. But this one stage we do have is so good that I honestly don't think there's anything a sequel could improve on. With amazing gameplay execution, variety, and music synergy, Flipper Flop is basically a flawless stage in my opinion. In Ninja Bodyguard, you play as a ninja who has to bodyguard this lord. These enemies will fire arrows and you have to time inputs to cut them in half. It's a copycat type game, but man is it good. For starters, it's hard, easily one of the hardest minigames in the series alongside Polyrhythm. The cues here are so sparse and delayed, so you have to pay very close attention to the music to guide your inputs. There aren't any visual cues either. As a result, this one relies on pure skill to complete, which makes it one of the most gratifying levels to play. It's so jarring your first time, but getting the hang of it after a few attempts feels immensely rewarding. Of course, the arrows will come in more varied patterns later in the stage, so now you have to press A and the D-pad in rapid succession. These are some of the tightest inputs the series will ever ask of you, and they make you feel like such a pro when you get them down. It's also just a very unique mechanic and fun to do, even if you don't get the timing right. The aesthetics aren't half bad as well. Sure, the song has to be repetitive, but the theming is just awesome. Playing as a ninja, slicing blindingly fast arrows is just plain sick. Take notes, Dog Ninja. Ninja Bodyguard also has a sequel, Ninja Reincarnate. Like most GBA sequels, there isn't much to say. It's just the same thing but with more challenging patterns. But since the challenge was the whole appeal of the original, I love this version as well. That 5 rock combo and simultaneous slice are amazing. Oh yeah, and the name for this one comes from how you're a biker trying to protect his girlfriend from these jerks that are just pelting you with rocks. I don't know, I find that kinda funny. This dude being a descendant of the ninja from the first iteration is charming too. Unexpected style points? Love to see it. Overall, I absolutely love Ninja Bodyguard's gameplay. It's got wonderfully challenging mechanics that take time to master, and are still tons of fun after you do. The theming is also great in both versions, with just the music holding it back. It's also just one of the most unique minigames in the series for how differently it tests your rhythm. It feels like a rhythm game we would never see made today, and that makes me love it even more. Of the 3 traditional iterations of Samurai Slice, the Wii version is my favorite by a slight margin. This time around, in addition to the usual demon slicing, you'll have to hold A and B at the right time to deflect this barrage of smaller demons. While this secondary input is technically more simple than the one in Super, as you're not required to let go of the buttons, I enjoy it more because the 2 buttons are more fun to press. I know it's small, but it really goes a long way at making the moment-to-moment gameplay more enjoyable. Outside of that small difference, this one is near identical to Super gameplay-wise. It just caps the consecutive slashes at 2, and it doesn't have any offbeats. What puts this iteration a bit higher is the aesthetic stuff. I love the music for this one. It's slow-paced, but it sounds so triumphant, and it really adds to the impact of your slashes. Speaking of impact, I love the Wandering Samurai's voice too. That scream he lets out when he attacks the barrage is part of what makes that move so satisfying. I also enjoy the chirps of the demons and how they get more evil as you progress. The slashes get delightfully dramatic near the end as well. And last, but certainly not least, this minigame executes the idea of obscuring your vision in easily the best way in the series. About halfway through the stage, this random story recap appears over the gameplay, which is just so creative and hilarious. It gives you some unexpected context behind the Wandering Samurai's actions, revealing that he's doing this to get a kid's pinwheel back. It's not avant-garde storytelling or anything, but it genuinely makes the Wandering Samurai a little more charming as a character. Now gameplay wise, the visual hindrance isn't too drastic outside of one instance, but it's still one of the most memorable moments in any rhythm game. It made me laugh out loud the first time I played. Final things of note, the text getting messed up as you mess up is a great touch, and the story recap idea is a creative way to evolve the darkness gimmick from the original Samurai Slice. This Samurai Slice also got a sequel, but I don't have much to add that I didn't mention before. This is just everything I loved about the original, but to a fast-paced remix and trickier patterns. The story recap gag doesn't hit as hard the second time, though it's neat they made a different one. Samurai Slice 2 is just as good, if not better than the original. Overall, that makes Samurai Slice and Fever a rhythm game with excellent gameplay, music, and humor. It's basically everything you could want in one, polished to perfection. In marching orders, you're part of this militaristic group that has to do what the commander says. There's quite a few commands. The main one is pressing A on each beat to march. You'll also have to look left or right by tapping that direction on the D-pad, and halt your marching with B. I already gravitate towards the keep the beat minigames in general, and the extra inputs add a great dose of variety. Honestly, they aren't used super creatively in this iteration, but I'm still glad they're here. The directional inputs are very unique. The sound effects for marching are also satisfying, and I like the marchers' designs. The way they bob to the rhythm when idle is really cute too. I love that detail. The only thing I'm not keen on is the music. It lacks a strong melody for me to latch onto, so I find it pretty forgettable. Marching Orders 1 is a rhythm game I have a soft spot for, thanks to its cute characters and gameplay variety, but it isn't super special. It would go to the bottom of this tier without its sequel. Marching Orders 2 gives the original's mechanics a chance to stretch their legs. Before we get to the gameplay though, I want to praise the visuals. The role reversal of having the commander march and marcher command is a great gag, but I don't really get what's up with the bunny motif. Bunnies hop, which isn't really the same thing as marching. I don't know, I guess something got lost in translation. Anyways, the cues in this version are mixed around more sporadically. You'll have to start and stop marching in quick succession, and the commander will even juke you with some of the audio cues. That naturally keeps you on your toes even though nothing is randomized, and I like that a lot. The highlight is when the left and right cues overlap with the marching, requiring you to press both on the same beat. I find this a very fun input, not to mention how unique it is. Only downside of this iteration is that the music is reused from the first. Last, a zebra in the room to mention is that since this minigame is from the original Rhythm Heaven, the commander's cues are in Japanese. The first stage returned in Megamix, which I played first, so I was already familiar with the patterns when I got to try it on GBA. The sequel, however, is what messes with my brain. No matter how many times I play it, I always get the cues for left and right mixed up at least once. Obviously, I won't hold that against this minigame, but it makes the sequel more difficult than probably intended, which might have inadvertently made me like it more. Whatever the case, I still love Marching Orders for its varied keep the beat gameplay, sound design, and charm. Next up is the fourth iteration of Karate Man from Megamix, Karate Man Sr. In this version, you play as Karate Joe's dad instead, who can do both the punch kick and combo moves from DS and Wii within the same minigame. No wonder he's the master. Combining all the previous Karate Man mechanics into one stage naturally gives it good variety, but surprisingly, it's the standard flower pot punching that makes this one so good. The pots just won't stop coming at you, and the way the stream is broken up by the special moves makes this one of the most exhilarating rhythm games in the series, and when the speed increases in the second half, it's perfection. This one is my favorite Karate Man stage, gameplay wise. So why is it still below Karate Man Wii? The main reason is the music. This is the only Karate Man stage to not have a vocal track, and it does kinda sting for me. The song for this stage is still great, but it's seriously not the same playing Karate Man without listening to a melodramatic breakup song. Also, it's just a little lame to see the previous mechanics get reused, but I can look past that because of the last thing I want to discuss. the theming. I love the idea behind this rhythm game. Karate Joe's dad has always been a character alluded to in the series, him always being the one providing the post-level commentary in the Karate Man stages. So finally getting to see and play as him is quite novel as a fan of the series. And since he's the master, that makes for a good in-universe reason to reuse those special moves. Besides, I can accept the real-life reason for the recycled mechanics, probably being due to Megamix's limited scope. So ultimately, I commend Karate Man Sr. for rehashing old ideas in an exciting way, both on the presentation and especially gameplay fronts. We enter the top 15 with Sumo Brothers. In this one, you play as one of the titular brothers and have to follow the cues the sensei dog gives out. The main two are pressing A each beat, and pressing A every other beat, which you occasionally swap between. The third is a pose you do with B. While these two rhythms are simple, and the switches between them are telegraphed visually, keeping the beat is always a fun time. The visuals are also pretty snappy, like Rat Race, so they don't completely trivialize the swap gimmick. As for the pose, it can be pretty tricky because of how early the cue is given, but it adds some challenge which I love, especially with those back-to-back poses. What really makes this stage shine are the aesthetics. The sound effects for the sumo stomps and hand slaps are so good, especially the stomps. They give the simple rhythms such an impeccable impact that elevates this stage into one of my favorites. The music is great too, mixing these gibberish vocals into a memorable melody. The Sumo Brothers themselves also have the perfect amount of goofiness to them. I love how they randomly look at the player, and how one of them throws his glasses at the end, the latter of which is oddly really cool to me. I don't know, it makes it feel like a big finish. Overall, while Sumo Brothers can be a little too easy, it more than makes up for that with incredible sound and humor. I really wish it got a sequel, but it's still one of my favorites on its own. In Tap Trial, you just have to press A to tap with the monkeys. It's simple, but that doesn't stop it from being one of the best. There's 4 types of cues, and they'll come at you non-stop. They're each fun on their own, and used pretty evenly. The sheer variety of inputs and tight pacing make the gameplay very engaging, despite the basic mechanics. The execution here is once again flawless to me. What makes it even better is the music. It's honestly the best standard music track in GBA, and its synergy with the gameplay is incredible. The theming's also great. Alongside Ringside, it's textbook rhythm heaven in my mind, what with the monkeys and cute girl. While the screen remains static, the character designs and animations are so charming that I can look past that. The cute noises the monkeys make and giraffes praise always put a smile on my face as I progress too. With amazing gameplay, music, and charm, Tap Trial is easily a series standout. And if that wasn't enough, it gets one of the best sequels in GBA as well. Turbo Tap Trial takes the same gameplay and ties it to a fast-paced remix of the original. As always, the increased difficulty makes the stage more enjoyable. I especially love everything after the background starts scrolling, as that's when the cues once again become non-stop. I think the single tap is a little overused, but it's still a very thrilling stage thanks to its speed. The remix itself is really good. It goes for a much different vibe than the original, but it's still amazing in its own right. A bit of charm is lost by cutting the giraffe in his dialogue, but the refreshed gameplay and music more than make up for that. I used to consider Turbo Tap Trial to be the better version, but after replaying both for this video, I think each version stands out for its own reasons. Tap Trial is rhythm heaven in its purest form. It takes a simple set of mechanics and makes a perfect experience with them via amazing music and charm. With 2 phenomenal iterations under its belt, it easily makes it high up on my list of favorites. Rapmen is another one of the original's best. This one features two dudes about to rap. You play as the big guy on the right and have to press A in 3 different patterns depending on what the other guy says. It's very similar to Fan Club and Love Rap, so what makes it rank much higher than those? Well, it's mostly because of the sequel, which we'll get to, but Rapman in general excels at making the core inputs feel good. When you get the timing down, the yellow guy does this thing. Combined with the poof animation, the red guy getting shocked by yellow's sheer oomph, and the sound effects, it all really goes a long way at making this one enjoyable, plus it's just fun to watch. That being said, I think Rapman drops the ball on actually using this mechanic. The way the lines are spread out doesn't make for a satisfying string of inputs to play. There's a few moments where it feels like the action's about to pick up, but then it just doesn't. I have the same problem with the music too. Don't get me wrong, it's real funky and I do like it, but it stays as this simple beat for the whole thing. You don't get that sense of progression with it compared to minigames like Tap Trial or Flipper Flop. But to finish with some positives, Rapmen is one of the most charming rhythm games in the series. What the MC is actually rapping about is snack time. I vibe with the contrast of these cool looking dudes rapping about something so childish with complete earnest so much. It's the kind of silliness that just hits perfectly for me, and it makes the stage as a whole very endearing. I also find the crunchy GBA compressed vocals oddly cool. Rapmen is a stage that's oozing with charm, but its lack of compelling gameplay and music hold it back. It would be around the 30s of the ranking on its own. That's where the sequel comes in. Rapwoman fixes the problems I had with the first iteration, while also doubling down on the charm. Immediately, the concept of playing as these rival gender-swapped counterparts to the Rapmen is a fun idea, and this MC also raps about snack time. And yes, like I implied, the gameplay and music in this one are much better. This girl will not stop rapping, and the different cues are used in a much more engaging manner, creating a satisfying flow to the gameplay that the original was missing. The new song also plays a part in making this version so good. It has such a jazzy, upbeat vibe that greatly complements the gameplay, this specific part being the highlight of the level. Definitely one of the biggest improvements in a rhythm game sequel. Rapwoman specifically is one of my favorite stages in the series. Overall, I love both versions of Rapmen for their charming theming and fun core mechanic, but the average execution in the first iteration brings the minigame down a bit, unfortunately. In Space Soccer, you play as a space kicker, kicking this ball on your knees to the rhythm. There's also the special high kick maneuver you gotta do by flicking every so often. As yet another keep the beat type of minigame, it stays engaging by requiring you to constantly tap with good rhythm. The real highlight, however, is that secondary input. The way you have to break your steady flow of taps with a flick, then get back into the main rhythm, makes the gameplay here very fun to me. The Space Kicker's voice clips are some of my favorites in the series. They're so charming, and they make every input here all the more enjoyable. The line in particular also makes that move one of my favorite inputs in the series. But what really steals the show here is the music. Space Soccer has my second favorite non-vocal track. It has such a distinct, catchy melody, sleek synths, and it goes with the gameplay very well. I kinda wish the background looked more like space, but the voice lines are enough to carry the aesthetics for me. Space Soccer also gets a sequel, but I don't have much to add. It's just more of the same, but with better gameplay. The flick is used more frequently, occasionally making you time them back to back, which makes for some of my favorite sections to play in DS. The cowboy aesthetic is neat, although I'm personally not super into it. The song is likewise given a more western rendition that I like, but I still prefer the original. For how high up I have this rhythm game, I wish I had more to say. Space Soccer is well above average in every one of its categories. It offers engaging gameplay, some of the best music in the series, and a charming character to boot. It's easily one of the best rhythm games in DS for me. Just barely missing out on the top 10 is First Contact. In this minigame, you play as an astronaut and have to translate what this alien is saying by repeating the rhythm he speaks with. There's also this occasional delayed input. I think it's by far one of the best takes on the copycat idea in the series. Even though the mechanics are simple, it has perfect pacing and complexity. The individual patterns are decently varied, and the cycles feel tightly woven together thanks to their shorter length. The delayed input adds a perfect pinch of challenge too. All this makes for a stage that's very engaging to play. But the cherry on top is the sound design. I don't know what secret sauce Megamix put into all its rhythm games, but the sound effects in so many of them are just so good. First Contact being the best example of them all. The sound for both the alien's text and your text are again pure ear candy. The latter especially is so punchy. I can't stress enough how satisfying it makes the stage. The extra touches like sounds for the alien pointing and nodding, and the crowd being in total awe at each successful translation, also adds so much. The music is great too, featuring a fittingly futuristic track, which is like no other in the series. And the cherry on top of that cherry is the theming. The concept on paper is already super intriguing. Then you actually play it and this is the funniest rhythm game in the series to me. The dialogue here for the most part is pretty standard, but the sporadic cuts to the scientists genuinely makes me laugh every time it happens. First Contact is already perfect as is, and yet it got a sequel that blows it out of the water. Second Contact, as it's cleverly called, is another one of my favorite stages in the series. Now the roles are reversed, and you play as the alien that's gotta translate what this farmer guy is saying. Everything I loved about the original is still here and then some. Gameplay-wise, the pacing is just as good, and the patterns themselves are a smidge better, thanks to the usual increase in difficulty you see in a sequel. These faster inputs are so much fun to do.
Breathe down, breathe down.
The audio and humor are also better in this version. The sound effects are the same amazing ones from before, but the song in particular gets a major glow up. The main melody is much more prominent, which I like a lot more. The role reversal is a clever idea, and we get the same amazing shots of the crowd watching the transmission. However, the new dialogue here is what really stands out. This guy calling himself handsome and inviting the aliens for tea is just hilarious. This one is a perfect sequel that improves on everything the original started. First Contact has everything I want in a rhythm game. It's got engaging gameplay, fantastic sound design, humor, and incredible theming. What keeps it out of the top 10? I just like the remaining ones more. Next up is my personal favorite Karate Man stage, the Wii version. Much like the DS iteration, it adds a new secondary action on top of the usual flower pot punching. This time it's a combo you do by pressing and releasing A and B. While I did say Karate Man Senior has my favorite gameplay of all the Karate Man stages, this version honestly isn't far behind thanks to its execution. The speed is real fast, and the pots come at you at a constant rate once the stage gets going, which makes the core action consistently engaging. The combo move also just feels awesome to pull off thanks to the fast tempo and animation. I much prefer using it over the punch kick of DS. The offbeats and hit 3 moments are used perfectly here too. These were featured in the previous 2 versions of Karate Man, but I barely talked about them as they didn't add much for me. But now, there are specific sections of the stage that focus on the offbeats, and the hit 3s have such an impact to them, again thanks to the speed. That makes them feel like substantial variations in the gameplay to me. All this comes together to form another one of the most exhilarating and satisfying rhythm games. And like I alluded to in the Karate Man Senior segment, what brings it to the next level is the music. While I prefer Struck by the Rain, Lonely Storm is another one of my absolute favorite vocal tracks. Its fast tempo and guitar solos are amazing. I love how it mirrors Struck by the Rain too, being about a man's perspective of a breakup instead of a woman's. This song is not just great on its own, as it's also one of the best tracks at complementing its associated gameplay. Many sections sound like they were made just for the offbeats, hit threes, or combos, and man does it pay off. It makes those inputs even more satisfying. It really is incredible how well the music and gameplay go together for this one, and it's why Karate Man Wii is one of my favorite stages. However, we're not done yet, as this version of Karate Man once again gets a sequel. First off, it's brought down a little by the new remix of Lonely Storm. I personally much prefer the original in a vacuum, but other than that, this stage is still great. The gameplay is notably much more complex, featuring plenty of offbeats and these new hit 4 strings. The stage also features sections with back-to-back combo moves, and those are super fun to do. It can be pretty tricky to keep up with everything, so I think it's a bit better than the original gameplay-wise, even with the slower tempo. I still think I prefer the original overall, just so I can hear the first version of Lonely Storm, but both are amazing stages. Karate Man's Fever iteration perfects the series staple minigame through its phenomenal intertwining of gameplay and music, creating one of the best experiences in the series. While Karate Man Senior may have better gameplay, and yes, better music, Wii still does a great job in both departments that it ultimately comes out on top for me. Coming in as my 9th favorite rhythm game is the Bon Odori, and if you've been keeping track, this is the last minigame from GBA to discuss, making it my favorite from that game as well. In this one, you have to clap along to the pans and panpas in the song. These are pretty clearly denoted by the lyrics that show up, and the text will even get highlighted accordingly. Despite this technically being a consistent visual cue, the spacing of the words can make it a little unintuitive to use. As a result, this minigame is pretty difficult, and yeah, I love it. It can take a bit to get the hang of this one, and even when you do, it's very easy to slip up. That makes this minigame consistently engaging no matter how many times I play it. Those panpas are particularly tricky, but they're also my favorite part of the level. That specific rhythm you have to press A twice with, combined with the hard to gauge timing, makes them some of my favorite inputs in the series. Those sections that focus on them at the end of each verse are always so much fun to pull off. The Bon Odori is definitely another minigame you got to feel the rhythm to do well in, and it can be a bit trial and error-y, but that only makes it all the more satisfying. Miscellaneous gameplay things I want to mention: the reactions of the other girls is a cute way to get feedback, and I like the funny final input that's impossible to get on your first try. So, the Bon Odori has some of my favorite gameplay in the series. What else does it offer? Well, I glossed over this earlier, but this stage has a vocal track. It's in the same boat as Fan Club, where the lyrics have to fit with the gameplay cues. Though, since your cues here are chants instead of specific phrases, that makes this song less awkward in a vacuum. The vocals are also quite beautiful to listen to. That being said, I'm not super into the instrumentation. It uses traditional Japanese instruments, which fits the theme, but isn't for me. The Bon Odori alone would still be one of my favorites if it was just this one version, but as per usual, what brings it so high is its sequel, Bon Dance. Let's start with the music, since that's where the original faltered for me. We now got a funky synth rendition of the song, which I jive with much more. The vocals are the same, outside of the new patterns of dons and pans, but like I said, the vocals were already great. That new instrumentation alone makes Bon Dance's song one of my favorites in GBA. But the better music is only half of what makes Bon Dance so special. It's a rhythm game sequel, so you bet it's harder than the original. And harder it is. While not quite as challenging as Ninja Bodyguard or Polyrhythm 2 in my opinion, Bun Dance is still up there as one of the hardest minigames in the series. Many lines are replaced with much trickier pun patterns, the end of each verse once again being the highlight. Those back-to-back panpas were immensely satisfying to master over several attempts. They're still a blast to pull off after the fact, and doing so with that bangin' remix in the background, it's easily one of my favorite stages. The Bun Adori stands out primarily for its challenge. Its hard to learn, hard to master nature for Rhythm Heaven standards makes it consistently engaging. That's not to mention how enjoyable I find the core clap action on its own. Combined with charming theming and music, especially in its sequel, that puts it a cut above the other difficult GBA minigames. I have no clue what the general consensus on Splashdown is, but it's always been one of my personal favorites. In this rhythm game, you're part of a synchronized swimming team and have to dive and resurface in time with the others. Sometimes you'll have to flick to jump out of the water too, either all at once or one by one. I love the mechanics in this one. Having to either release normally or flick upon resurfacing makes perfect use of DS's control scheme, not to mention how well it fits with the theme. The standard tap and release can be a little unimpactful, but flicking itself is fun as always. I find doing them in time with the others especially satisfying. As for the execution, it does start out a bit too slow, but when it picks up, I find it very exhilarating. It's easy to get tripped up by the controls while trying to keep up with the cues, and I find that a fun and unique challenge. The big highlight for me is the music. I think it's real good. It's another one of my favorite normal tracks. The instrumentation and melody just click so strongly for me. It honestly elevates the experience a ton, keeping things enjoyable even when the gameplay is simple. Aesthetically, synchronized swimming doesn't sound like the most exciting theme, but I think it's done well. I love the dolphins the swimmers jump with, plus the voice clip is so charming to me. And I know like every rhythm game does this, but I particularly enjoy getting to see how in sync I was with the CPUs when jumping together. Splashdown 1 has fun mechanics and a good amount of charm, but its execution can sometimes be underwhelming. That's where the sequel comes in. Splashdown 2 takes the solid foundation of the original and makes an incredible stage out of it. The standard diving and resurfacing now happen way more frequently. That makes a previously somewhat boring mechanic more interesting, and the stage more engaging throughout. The flick jumps are back, and strong as ever too. Those changes make for such a fun, fast-paced stage that I never get tired of revisiting. The gameplay is once again flawless to me. The new music is also amazing. We got a jazzy swing remix of the original that I love just as much. It elevates the experience just as much as before, perhaps even more so for its stronger gameplay synergy. And the charming animals and voice clips are still there too. That makes Splashdown 2 an upgrade in every possible way. It's yet another one of my favorite stages. So overall, while Splashdown 1 may not be the most exciting stage in the world, its sequel more than makes up for that, utilizing the minigame's varied mechanics to their fullest with satisfyingly brisk pacing. Top it off with fantastic music in both iterations, a dollop of charm, and you got an all-timer rhythm game in my book. Rhythm Heaven Fever was the first game in the series I played. I enjoyed it for the first few stages, but there wasn't anything that really grabbed me. That was until I got to Air Rally. Air Rally was the stage that made me go from liking Rhythm Heaven to loving it. It's like the only rhythm game I have this kinda nostalgic connection to, but even beyond that, I genuinely do think it's one of the best in the series. This one sees you trying to maintain a badminton rally in the air. It's pretty simple to do so, just press A every other beat. Sometimes you'll have to wait an extra beat before your input too. It's actually mechanically identical to Spaceball, so what makes this rhythm game way better? Pretty much everything, but we'll start with the gameplay. You should know by now that I love the faster paced minigames, and Air Rally is the textbook definition of one. Despite the simple and repetitive nature of doing a rally, the stage stays very engaging thanks to that breakneck pace. This minigame also executes the idea of obscuring your vision in another one of the best ways. About halfway in, a ton of clouds will appear which make it impossible to see the birdie. Night will also fall, which makes the visuals harder to read. Air Rally is an early stage in Fever, so all this can be a pretty big difficulty spike for new players, but that's exactly why I love it so much. Realizing your sense of rhythm is spot on by maintaining the rally, despite all those disruptions, is incredibly satisfying. The game perfectly eases you into relying on sound as well, since the mechanics are so simple. It's a very well designed difficulty curve in my opinion. The disruptions are also just funny to watch, which brings me to my next point. Air Rally is another one of the most hilarious minigames in the series to me. Right away, the absurd idea of playing badminton while flying on high-speed mini planes is the kind of wackiness that you'll only find in these games. And like I said, the two continuing their game through all the chaos is funny to me. Speaking of the two, Forthington's voice clips are amazing, and frankly, some of the most iconic in the series. I never get tired of hearing his. And I love how his voice changes based on his distance. The way he screams his lines when he's further back is hysterical. And an overlooked detail, if you miss the final input, he'll even have unique dialogue about it, which is a great touch. I also love how Baxter twirls his racket at pivotal parts of the stage. It's such a small detail, but the amount of impact it adds to these moments is unreal. Oh yeah, and the sound effects for hitting the birdie are satisfying as well, especially for the faraway shots. Last thing to note is the music. It's once again a favorite regular stage theme of mine. It perfectly captures the fast, fun, and zany vibe of the stage, and it's the final touch that makes this level one of the best. Air Rally is the series' best example of making an unforgettable experience out of a simple gameplay loop. When you boil it down, you're just pressing A every other beat most of the time, but the minigame's fast pace and visual disruptions keep it engaging for veterans and newcomers alike. Combined with memorable theming, voice lines, and music, and you got a rhythm game that will forever be a highlight of the series. Like Flipper Flop, it's a stage that, on paper, you'd wish got a sequel, but I don't think there was any need to revisit this idea. Air Rally is already perfect as is. And for the final Megamix original, my favorite out of all of them is Kitties. In this one, you're part of a trio of cats that clap. After the you gotta clap twice. There's also this spin maneuver and fish grab to shake things up. It might not look like much, but this is one of my favorite stages in the series, gameplay wise. The cues are always lined up, one after the other. There's basically no downtime in this one, which makes it very engaging. The three inputs themselves also feel very distinct, and work well together to create a satisfying level of flow and variety to the stage, all while being plenty of fun on their own. The music is also fantastic, being this groovy tune with a perfect touch of silliness. It has great synergy with the mechanics too. Every clap, twirl, and pounce is synced up to the song, which is an amazing attention to detail. The song additionally has a great sense of progression and build-up throughout. The sound effects similarly enhance the experience, with the sound for stopping the twirl being especially impactful. Last thing to discuss is the presentation. Kitties stands out for how simple, almost crudely the titular kittens are drawn and animated, as well as how they're placed in another featureless white plane. It kinda rips off Glee Club, but if it was memorable in that minigame, then it's definitely memorable here. Kitties also breaks from the expected rhythm game naming scheme, featuring an exclamation point in the title and even a very blunt description. That made encountering this minigame in the campaign delightfully jarring. Also, I mentioned this a couple times, but I'm usually not a fan of when the series hammers in a gag. In this case, that the kitties are just so darn cute, but that stuff is relegated to pretty much just the minigame description, so I can look past that. Overall, Kitties is a stage with perfect gameplay. The pacing and variety work incredibly well together to create such a fun and engaging experience, with the music and sound being used to perfectly complement those inputs, all alongside a memorable presentation to tie it all together. It's another case of pure Rhythm Heaven goodness, I'd say. Remember how back in the Pajama Party section I said it would be a top 5 minigame if it had more compelling gameplay? Love Lab is exactly that. In this minigame, you play as a scientist from the titular lab trying to get to the bottom of this whole love thing. You'll make hearts by catching, shaking, and tossing the flasks, copying the pattern your partner does. These core mechanics are some of my favorites in the series. The stage makes you mix and match these actions in several different ways, and they're all super engaging. Catching and flicking on offbeats, doing some shakes and then immediately flicking, and especially these longer patterns, are all so good. Physically performing the shake is a ton of fun as well, and it provides some of the best immersion in the series. There really isn't anything else like it, even within DS, and I think Love Lab deserves major props for its gameplay. Each of those individual actions also feel great thanks to the sound effects, which are some of the best in DS. The liquid swishing in the flask, the hearts filling up in the box, and that snap when you catch the flask are all sublime. And while on sound, let's talk about the music. Much like Pajama Party, Love Lab uses a similar a cappella type of singing for the melody, and once again, it's absolutely immaculate to listen to. The occasional whistling is a fantastic touch as well. I don't think I need to say it, but it's another one of my favorite tracks. I also want to highlight the theming here. The concept of a laboratory filled with scientists that study love is a perfect blend of charming and silly. It's so distinctly Rhythm Heaven, I love it so much. The sunset the stage takes place in, as well as the music, paint such a beautifully romantic atmosphere that, again like Pajama Party, makes you feel good just by playing the stage. Overall, Love Lab offers some of the most unique gameplay ideas and satisfying execution in all of DS, with phenomenal theming, atmosphere, and sound to make it stand out even more. I think some added variety in a potential sequel would have been nice, since some patterns are admittedly kinda overused, but it's absolutely no big deal if the stage still makes it this far. Love Lab is easily one of the series' all-time greats. Lockstep is undoubtedly the fan-favorite rhythm game that, surprise surprise, is one of my favorites as well. This one is a keep the beat type of minigame, and easily the best of its kind. As usual, you're tasked with tapping on every beat. The gimmick is that you'll have to switch between tapping on and off beat when you hear specific cues, without stopping. This stage is very hard on a first playthrough, one of the hardest in the series in fact. But just like any other difficult stage, mastering its mechanics over time is immensely gratifying. The game perfectly guides you through the swap, thanks to the cue basically spelling out the rhythm you need to tap with. Once you get a grasp on that, you're in for some of the best gameplay in the series. It starts out with long stretches of on and off beats to get you accustomed to them, all before... I think this one section might single-handedly be, like, the best portion of gameplay in the entire series. Having to swap between the two beats at that fast of a rate is such an exhilarating challenge that never gets old no matter how many times I replay it. The stage does peak at that moment, but it remains fun for the entire runtime thanks to that breakneck tempo. The sheer speed of this one makes it easy to slip up even when you know what you're doing, which always keeps you on your toes. And swapping between the rhythms is still incredibly satisfying to do on its own. Same goes for the prolonged offbeat sections near the end. Just like the Bon Adori, Lockstep's challenge isn't all it has going for it. The visuals in this stage are some of the trippiest in the series. It's mesmerizing to watch the step switchers all step in unison. The way they show their light or dark side based on whether you're tapping on or offbeat is a great way to represent the idea of experiencing both sides of the rhythm, while also being another cool visual. I like their animation before the level starts, and the pose they hit when stepping is pretty dope in my opinion. Later in the stage, the camera will start to zoom out, and when it's furthest out, these portraits of old guys will appear when you're on the offbeat. It's such a random gag, I love how out of left field it is. Lastly, I don't have much to say about the music. It's definitely my least favorite among the recent minigames, but it at least has incredible gameplay synergy, which makes the experience as satisfying as possible. That covers everything about Lockstep 1, but as for Lockstep 2, it genuinely might be one of my least favorite sequels in the series. Don't get me wrong, on its own, it's perfectly fine, but judged purely as a follow-up to the original, it's massively underwhelming in my opinion. The points at which you switch between the on and off beats are the same as the original, but now you do so to the beat of a much slower swing remix of the song. This new remix apparently changes the tap timings for the offbeats, but I never noticed anything different. It feels the same as the original to me. Since the speed was a big part of Lockstep's appeal, I can't help but find Lockstep 2 worse than the original. I vastly prefer the first iteration, and barely revisit the sequel. The only cool new thing about Lockstep 2 is that the old guys in those portraits now wear the Clappy Trio's wig, and oh okay, that's pretty funny. Once again, I'm by no means saying that Lockstep 2 is on the level of like, Working Dough or something. Since Lockstep is a top 5 rhythm game as is, Lockstep 2 being worse just means it's around a top 20, top 30 rhythm game on its own. Most of what I love about the original is still here, and I'm only being so harsh on this sequel because of how phenomenal the original was. Honestly, a GBA tier sequel was all this minigame needed. Keeping the music the same, but making the rhythm changes more sporadic, would have been neat. At the end of the day, Lockstep 2 is a fun time, and it's hard to be too mad at having more Lockstep to play, but I still find it to be one of the most disappointing sequels in the series. In any case, it's easy to see why Lockstep is so beloved. Its unique, fast-paced gameplay of swapping rhythms makes for a satisfying challenge that remains engaging even after mastering it, all while putting some funky, memorable visuals on screen to distract you. It's not my personal all-time favorite due to its lopsided difficulty and lackluster sequel, but those are really just nitpicks if Lockstep still manages to make it this high on my list. When revisiting each minigame for the ranking, I already had a good idea on which ones I liked, didn't like, and everything in between. However, there was one incredible rhythm game I couldn't believe I had previously overlooked. I'm talking about the final Fever minigame on this list, Cheerleaders. I thought it was good before, but now it's easily one of my all-time favorites. In this rhythm game, you play as a member of the school library pep squad, and gotta cheer on the other students studying. You'll do this by pressing A to twirl your book in time with the others. There's a whopping 4 types of twirl patterns, as well as a 5th maneuver that requires you to press and release A and B at the right time. The amount of input variety is great on its own, but as you would expect, it's how Cheerleaders ends up using these mechanics that puts it so high. Unlike most rhythm games where the commands will happen one at a time, this stage will frequently layer cues on top of each other. This creates some of the most dynamic and interesting gameplay segments in the series. Even though the stage isn't randomized, it feels like you have no idea what's coming next, and some of these input combinations can get pretty tight too. It's a super engaging challenge that's like no other. The patterns aren't just well designed, as they feel great to pull off individually as well. Admittedly, the standard
1, 2, 3.
leaves a little to be desired for how unimpactful it is, but it doesn't really matter because of the layering business I mentioned. I love those other inputs exponentially though. And both variants of that diagonal sweep have such a fun rhythm to them. The slower version of the latter is especially good. That extra sound effect on the boom, you know, your input, is such a small detail, but it adds so much impact. And last but not least, the is just amazing. The zoom out and twirling books when you hold the buttons, then dramatic zoom in and crowd cheering when you let go, it's so satisfying every time. Everyone also opens their books to make a picture that references previous rhythm games. Again, since I started with Fever, I had no idea who any of these guys were my first time playing, but nowadays I love that extra bit of fan service. And finally, after some inputs, the books will shine and your character will go, which is some real charming feedback. I've got nothing but praise for the gameplay of Cheerleaders, so now let's discuss the solid aesthetics of the stage. First off, I love the premise, it's hilarious. The obvious joke about being loud in a library is great, and the end cards provide better payoff than usual. The music is also pretty good, but since it's so low-key, it honestly just gets drowned out by all the cues being shouted. That kinda sucks, but I don't really mind, since I enjoy the voice clips in this level, especially the backing vocals. So on its own, Cheerleaders is already one of the best rhythm games from Fever's initial batch. Then they gave it a sequel and made it the best non-remixed level in the game. Cheerleaders 2 takes everything great about the original and cranks it up to 11. Okay, admittedly, the gameplay is only a smidge more complex, taking advantage of that layering mechanic just a bit more. Though the increase in difficulty is small, it makes a world of difference. There's so many incredibly fun segments in this one. And if that wasn't enough, I jive with the aesthetics of this sequel more than the original. The Pep Squad performing at a museum is kinda random, but I dig it. The song is the real winner though. It got a bangin' synth-heavy remix, with some sweet violins mixed in there. I love this song way more, and it stands out amongst all the vocals much better. Overall, Cheerleaders is easily one of my favorite rhythm games for its gameplay. The unique challenge of having to time your inputs to cues that get stacked on top of each other is consistently engaging and satisfying, especially in the sequel. With cute characters, voice lines, a funny scenario, and fantastic music, also especially in the sequel, this rhythm game goes above and beyond in every category. I can see why I overlooked this one so much before. It isn't the flashiest minigame, nor the wackiest, so it probably won't stick in your mind. But still, after sifting through the series' entire catalog for this ranking, Cheerleaders undoubtedly stands as one of the best. Of all the fast-paced rhythm games in the series, Munchie Monk is easily my favorite. In this one, you play as the titular monk and have to eat the dumplings placed in front of you. There's 3 types of inputs: the single tap, tapping 3 beats in a row, and tapping twice in quick succession. I think it's pretty well known that this minigame is mechanically identical to Micro Row, but I can't stress enough how much the rapid pace of Munchie Monk elevates its gameplay. Having to react to fast cues coming at you non-stop with perfect rhythm, makes for possibly the most engaging gameplay in the series. That double tap is especially so much fun thanks to the sheer speed you gotta tap with to ace it. This minigame's inputs also feel extra good thanks to the sound effects. I love how they all come together, from the verbal cue, to the monk slapping his wrist, to the swallow sound effect. It's goofy, sure, but it seriously enhances the experience for me.
One go, one go, one go, one go, one go, one go, two go, one go, two go, one go, two go, one go, two go, one go, three go, go, one go, one go, three go, go, one go, one go, three go, go, one go, one go, three go, go, two go, one go, two go.
Speaking of sound, let's touch on the music. Not only is it great on its own, but it's got phenomenal synergy with the gameplay too. You'll have to perform more complicated inputs as the song intensifies, which feels amazing. However, that leads me to my one critique with this level. It's far too short, clocking in at around 40 seconds. But even with that shoestring length, Munchie Monk's gameplay is so incredible that I'd still place it at this spot regardless. Of course, that's not where this story ends though, as we got its sequel to talk about. Munchie Monk 2 is an absolutely perfect stage. The only gameplay difference is that they made it twice as long as the first, and that was all they needed to do. It uses the same amazing mechanics as the original, with just as perfect music synergy, only now, you do it to an incredible ska remix. I believe that Munchie Monk 2, gameplay-wise, is the peak of Rhythm Heaven. This single stage is so unbelievably satisfying and infinitely replayable to me. I wish I had more to say, but this level really does speak for itself.
One go, one go, one go, three go, 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 two go, one 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 go, two go, one 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 go, two go, one 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 go, two go, one go, two go, one go, two go, one go, two go, one go, three go, go, one go, one go, three go, go, one go, one go, three go, go, one go, one go, three go, go, two go, one go, two go, one go.
But wait, I hear you think, why is the minigame that I said was the peak of the series not at number 1? Well, that's why I said gameplay-wise. As perfect as it is to play Munchie Monk, I can't bring myself to put it at the top of the list because of the theming. I just don't find this monk's eating talents all that charming, nor his training just being eating funny. I do love the premise behind the sequel though. The monk losing his position because of his lousy training and joining the circus instead is hilarious. I wish more rhythm games attempted this kind of through line between iterations. I also love that sassy glare the monk does at the end of the sequel too, and the implication that the Love Lab scientists are involved makes this weird minigame even weirder. Yeah, I just listed a bunch of aesthetic stuff I enjoy, but it's all minor stuff that's pretty out of the way. What we see, you know, the core theme of the minigame, is simply something I don't vibe with. But I don't want my more or less indifference towards the theming to undermine how incredible the gameplay of Munchie Monk is. Both iterations are extremely engaging stages thanks to their fast pace, varied inputs, and amazing sound. They're absolutely timeless stages that I can always revisit and get the same amount of value from every time. And now, we've at long last reached the final minigame, my personal favorite in the whole series, which is none other than... If Munchie Monk is peak Rhythm Heaven gameplay, then Rockers is peak Rhythm Heaven vibes, and the latter is what won me over. Let's start with the gameplay and work our way down like usual though. In this minigame, you gotta rock out with JJ Rocker by copying his guitar patterns. On paper, this sounds like the other simple copycat games I ranked much lower, but the gameplay of Rockers goes above and beyond thanks to its guitar mechanics. When you flick, you'll strum your guitar. Afterwards, the sound will persist indefinitely, and you'll have to tap again to mute your strings. This makes for some varied and interesting patterns for you to perform. You'll often have to start and stop the strings in quick succession, as well as occasionally let them play out for a while. I also want to highlight this round where your start and stop timings overlap with each other. I find that one especially satisfying. And in addition to the usual copycat action, there's even these moments where you'll play a riff together to break up the cycle of watching and repeating, which feels awesome. Those moments do so much to enhance the pacing of the stage, and alongside the unique guitar mechanics, that makes the gameplay loop very engaging as a whole. I also want to praise the game feel. Strumming your guitar in this minigame, on its own, is a ton of fun. The way the characters get put into the center of the screen, the white spark effects to let you know you didn't input correctly, the guitar sounds themselves, and those exaggerated head turn animations make each strum, each flick in this minigame, feel so impactful and satisfying. The last of which also adds a touch of silliness that I appreciate. Then there's of course, the obvious but perfect correlation between strumming a guitar and flicking the screen. And I love seeing how in sync I was with the instructor during the double riffs. Trying to time your flicks and stops as accurately as possible is made so much fun thanks to how the sparks appear and disappear on a dime. So while I'd still say I enjoy Munchie Monk's gameplay more, Rockers isn't far behind at all. Its complex guitar mechanics are so much fun to play with, and the special riffs add a satisfying level of flow. This results in a copycat stage with great variety and exceptional identity. Rockers is still top 5 material in this category for sure. But as I cold opened this segment with, the aspect Rockers truly shines in are its aesthetics. First, I want to briefly highlight the characters. I love both their designs, I think they're pretty cool, especially when they play those riffs together. The real talking point though is the music. Simply put, this stage has my favorite non-vocal track. That hook at the end is straight up one of the catchiest melodies in the series, and the build up to it is so good. The instrumentation has a surprisingly chill mood, while still having a bit of coolness to it, which I'm so in love with. That makes this a surprisingly feel-good stage to play. And of course, it has phenomenal synergy with the gameplay. I never get tired of listening to this song, and it's what makes the experience for me so incredible, despite it only being a minute long. Oh yeah, this stage is only a minute long. It's not as criminal as Munchie Monk 1 being only 40 seconds long, but it still stings a little. Luckily, Rockers got a sequel. Rockers 2 introduces this key shift, which you do by holding one of the shoulder buttons while your strings are playing. As much as I love this mechanic nowadays, it took a good while for it to grow on me. It's pretty difficult to learn, since there's only 2 moments where it gets put to work. The fact that your guitar's default sound changes during these moments, and that your guitar sounds completely different from the instructor's to begin with, amplifies this problem. I wish there was a visual indication that you performed a key change correctly, as the only indicator is the crowd cheering, which is pretty subtle. Still, as awkward and underutilized as this mechanic is, it turns this technical minigame into perhaps the most technical in the series, which I admire. And when you do get the hang of the key changes, those 2 moments are extremely satisfying to pull off, both physically and audibly. Other than that new addition, this is still Rockers at its core, and everything I praised about the original's gameplay applies here. As for the music, while it does lack that immaculate blend of chill and cool I loved so much about the original, instead leaning more into that cool factor, this remix is just as amazing. That incredibly catchy melody is still intact, so I love listening to this one too. Overall, I think I slightly prefer Rockers 1 over 2, since I'm more partial to the original version of the song, but I still love coming back to the added challenge in the sequel. Regardless, both are amazing stages, with some of the most fun and unique mechanics and best music in the series, the sequel pushing the gameplay to its limit. So for being the perfect blend of complexity, challenge, game feel, music, and overall vibes, Rockers takes the cake as my personal favorite rhythm game across all 92 in the series. It still sucks that Rockers 2 is also just a minute long. Okay, so I wanted to focus on the core rhythm games for this video, but I can't not talk about the guitar lessons. This is easily the best side mode in any Rhythm Heaven. It basically allows you to play more rockers, but to the music of another rhythm game. Mixing and matching the gameplay and music of different minigames is such a genius idea that I can't believe the series never tried it again. There's 8 levels to play, split between basic and technical, the latter incorporating that key change mechanic from the sequel. While the song choices for the basic courses are questionable, they're at least fun in practice. But for the technical courses, they just straight up picked some of the best songs in DS for this. Munchie Monk 2, Space Soccer 2, Splashdown 2, and Frog Hop 2? Absolutely insane track list. Rockers is already my favorite rhythm game, so I don't think I need to explain why getting functionally 8 additional Rockers levels adds so much valuable content to the game for me. That Munchie Monk course is easily my favorite, turning Rockers into a fast, hectic, yet satisfying challenge to master.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2. One, two, 1, 2.
It even uses a score system, similar to the one from Megamix, and tracks your highest rankings, adding so much replay value to DS. I know it's not fair to factor these bonus stages into Rockers ranking, but honestly, it would still be my favorite even without the guitar lessons. The extra love the developers gave this minigame just solidified that opinion. Plus, I think this mode is criminally underrated and I wanted to put some spotlight on it. And finally, that covers all the rhythm games. To wrap things up, I wanted to separate the ranking by game and give my thoughts on each of the 4 Rhythm Heavens as a whole. As I've said multiple times throughout the ranking, the first Rhythm Heaven stands out for how weird and different it is compared to its sequels. A lot of its minigames have simple ideas and simple execution, and many don't even use a proper single-loop music track. While GBA doesn't reach the highs of other entries because of its lack of polish, it perhaps has the most variety in its selection. There's minigames with substantial challenge like Ninja Bodyguard and Polyrhythm, fun uses of the other face buttons like Sick Beats and Marching Orders, and clear focus on testing your rhythm like Sneaky Spirits and Bunny Hop. Even the minigames that aren't as strong due to their more outlandish ideas, such as Quiz Show, still have some things to enjoy about them. This is a selection I rarely get bored of. Before working on this ranking, Rhythm Heaven DS was already my personal favorite game in the series, and seeing how the ranking turned out, yeah, it definitely still is. I literally put half of its minigames in my favorites tier. Anyways, these minigames stand out for several reasons. Obviously, there's the touch controls, which allow for much more engaging and unique control schemes across the board, with some notable examples being Glee Club and Love Lab. Those are minigames that couldn't be made anywhere else. Many minigames with otherwise simple mechanics are greatly elevated by the inherent satisfaction of flicking as well. DJ School, Built to Scale, The Dazzles, and Big Rock Finish just wouldn't be the same without their controls. But even beyond that, I just think these are some of the most fun stages with some of the best music to boot. Munchie Monk and Lockstep being major series highlights, and those don't even take advantage of the touch controls. Even entries I didn't rank super high, like Freeze Frame and Love Lizards, still have neat things going for them. Dog Ninja and Philbots are the only ones I would consider duds, and even then, they're not atrocious or anything. This is by far the strongest selection of rhythm games the series has seen yet in my opinion, even with the awkward aspect ratio and lack of polish compared to the later entries. Oh, and as a bonus, DS even has the best endless games. I'm not super into these in general, but Glass Tappers, Tunnel, and Rhythm Move Dungeon are a few of the endless modes I really enjoy. I find Fever's selection of rhythm games to be the most average. Compared to the other games, this one has the least amount of minigames I would consider favorites. Even though stages like Cheerleaders and Air Rally are seriously some of the best in the whole series, Fever minigames on that level are few and far between. Majority of Fever's selection just doesn't grab me compared to what the other games offer. I find stages like Packaging Pests, Figure Fighter, and Board Meeting plenty of fun, but each of them fall short in aspects like music or theming for me, so I can't bring myself to rank them super high. Again, the series is overall fantastic, so Fever's selection being average in my eyes just means that the game is really good. That being said, even if there are only two, Fever does have the most rhythm games I would consider bad. Working Dough 2 and Double Date 2 are by far my least favorite stages in the series. Fever also has some of the most forgettable stages, like Catch of the Day, Shrimp Shuffle, and Donk Donk. I guess that's to be expected since it has the largest roster, but still, those stages bring down Fever quite a bit. I do appreciate how refined the overall game feels, but for me, Fever is as standard of a Rhythm Heaven experience you can get. If it's any consolation, I think this game easily has the best remixes. As for the Megamix originals, these honestly just feel like an extension of Fever's selection. They have the same degree of polish, but I just so happen to jive with more of them. Minigames like Pajama Party, Sumo Brothers, and First Contact are pretty simple in the grand scheme of things, but they shine as some of the series' best thanks to either their humor or charm. I do think Megamix does have some pretty whatever minigames though. Fruit Basket and Tangotronic just get lost in the crowd that is the entire series, but that's mostly just cause I don't really care for their aesthetics. I think a full roster of Megamix minigames could be a bit better than Fever if the charm and humor kept up. And with that, we're finally done talking about Rhythm Heaven. Once again, all this was just my opinion, and outside of a handful of sequels, I don't think there's a single bad stage in the series. I love Rhythm Heaven to death, man, and thank you so much for listening to me ramble about all the highs and lows of this underrated series. Like I said at the very beginning, I'm sure opinions on these rhythm games would differ from person to person, so let me know what your favorites are and why in the comments. I genuinely love to hear from you guys. Okay, now we can talk about the elephant in the room. This was a video I had in the works since 2024, but dropped the idea after realizing just how tall of an order this would be, especially for someone who has zero video essay experience, like me. Seeing the announcement of Rhythm Heaven Groove in March 2025 gave me the motivation to pick up this project again. I know this video will be outdated by time it goes live, but Groove is currently my most anticipated video game of 2026, and I thought making this ranking would get me even more hyped for it, which it did by the way. Also, after watching the overview trailer reveal that there's gonna be over 80 new rhythm games, yeah, no way am I adding that to this video. Besides, it was gonna get outdated anyways. I'm definitely down to do a similar video with all of Groove's new rhythm games in the future, but for now, I'm very tired, and all I want to do is play that new game. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Take care.